Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I don't have a good excuse. I lost my cord. And then I found my cord. So I was cordless. Now I'm wired. We're ready to go. I'm sure Felice is waiting. This is my bad. Happy Monday to each and every single one of you, wherever you are, however you may be joining us. Thanks for making us part of your day. Hey, Katrina. How are you? How's everybody else? What a weekend. What a weekend of like not a lot happening. It was terrific. At least for me. I don't even know. I don't know what kind of weekend it was. I had a sick kid all weekend. It was fun because my kid likes me when she's sick. She spends more time with me because when she runs away, she coughs, so she just stays right there with me. Let me just read a message real quick. Oh, there's Felice. Good morning, Sarah Michelle. FDT, I love it, Michael. I love that. Good morning, Felice.
Hey.
Hey.
Got it.
Nice to see you. Almost.
Nice to see you as well.
I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Did we go visit our bridge people?
Oh, no, I actually did not this weekend. I just,
visits.
Yeah, just did a lot of stuff with my family that I needed to do. My brother just had a baby and stuff like that. Or my brother's wife, I should say.
Does your brother live in Arizona too?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Well, congratulations to you and also to your brother. Baby, do we have a baby name if you want to share that?
Eliza.
It's a good Mormon name. I applaud that. I like getting use of the name Eliza. I think we had a Eliza Snow. I think that's a good Mormon name. How was your date with Travis to Cheesecake Factory?
Oh, I know. Travis and I never connected. That menu is too long at Cheesecake Factory. I'm serious about that. If I was running a restaurant, I would not have a menu that long. But
Have you ever been to BJ's? Theirs is kind of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like oregano's. They have like pizookie, that dessert where you eat cookie. They like cook a cookie and then put like ice cream on top of it.
Oh shit! I have gifts.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was like,
shit.
God,
Thank you guys for the gifts, but I need to restart. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
All right, bye.
Golly, Sorry about that. My deepest and most sincere apologies. Thank you guys. As you're rolling in, if you could just hit the likes, just boop my nose a little bit. Keep booping. Boop, 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 boop. And we'll get that up there. Thank you for your patience. I only have to restart half the time. I had to restart. Golly, Sorry about that. My deepest and most sincere apologies. Thank you guys. As you're rolling in, if you could just hit the likes, just boop my nose a little bit. Keep booping. Boop, 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 boop. And we'll get that up there. Thank you for your patience. I only have to restart half the time. I had to restart. I had GIFs on, and you can't turn GIFs off when you're already live. You have to restart it in order to do that. So I apologize for that. That's definitely on me. Here comes Felice. And I need to turn off my heater too before it gets too hot. I'll be right back.
Now that he's gone, no. Good morning. Happy Monday. Guys, again, we did forget to turn off gifts, but we are still participating in CoinCot. The fun part is if you would like to donate to us, obviously we're not accepting gifts in solidarity with BIPOC creators. I was like, what are you doing? I thought you were saying something was on my face. And I was like,
I think if I do it, it counts as a like, I think.
Oh, tap the screen. I get what you're doing now. Okay, so yeah, most important things, since we're not accepting gifts, tap the screen as much as you can throughout the live so we can get to the For You page. If you would like to donate to us, use one of, this is Cash App and Venmo. Tip jar on Jay's profile is PayPal if you need that. Please write us a funny message, or on Friday, it was really good. We were doing like F, marry, kill, like three random politicians, like whatever you think is funny, or just a funny message that has to do with whatever we're talking about. And we will read those out periodically through the show. But yes, let's work out those fingers. Let's tap the screen. Let's get to 10K right away. So hopefully we may be able to talk to some Republicans today.
I like the 10K right away.
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
already to say. Yeah, we're almost to say. See, as our fingers are getting stronger, like I say, some people are here for the politics, most for the finger workouts, and like 10K is the tapping is nothing to us anymore.
We are pioneers. So I've got my phone charging. It was dead for my backup to check for comments. So give that I don't know how long it takes for a phone to turn on once it's been dead.
Shouldn't be too long, except for I think my backup phone is like slowly dying here. What morning it will just not be turning on.
Well, that's Apple.
Phone soon.
We know they do that. They absolutely do that.
That's what it feels like is slowly happening to mine.
I added a couple things to the notes. We can get to them whenever. But I felt like the news of the weekend was Donald Trump being a sneakerhead. And I think that's really where we should start with Donald Trump, the sneakerhead. And
we can start there, but I mean, it is such a good story. I wanted to, if you're okay with it, I just wanted to go through this. I was going to set up, I forgot about this. I usually watch 60 Minutes. I know that's a very weird activity. Yeah, I like 60. I've always, since I was a young child, I think 60 Minutes is super informative. I've always liked 60 Minutes. I feel like there's something you could always learn. Even if you don't like one story, there will be something on there that's like super interesting. And last night, I think we talked about this briefly last week, but last night, the former Wisconsin Republican Party chair, so the state Republican, the RNC, like Wisconsin State Republican Party chair, was on 60 Minutes. And this has been a kind of widely anticipated thing. And I wanted to have clips to play, but then I noticed all the clips are so long. So Jay, if you want to look at the top of the outline, there is an article, the first article, the CBS article.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up. I just wanted to go over this really quick because I think
we don't have to be quick. Let's do it. I didn't watch this interview, so this is going to be news to me. This is fun. I get to learn from Felice today.
Yeah. So Andrew Hitt. Okay. So the former Wisconsin Republican Party chairman, Andrew Hitt. So he was nominated to be an elector if former President Donald Trump won the state in 2020. But after Trump lost, and by like 20,000 votes, Hitt and 9 other Republican electors met at the state capitol and signed documents falsely claiming Trump won. Hitt said lawyers told him the documents they were signing were meaningless unless Trump's legal team won its lawsuit seeking to dismiss over 200,000 votes in 2 Democratic counties. So Hitt said he was advised that if a court ruled in Trump's favor and he and other Republicans did not meet and sign the documents on December 14th, 2020, when the Democratic electors were required to meet to cast their votes for President Biden, he would be responsible. Like he was told basically, you'll be responsible as Republican Party chair for Trump forfeiting Wisconsin.
That court case, that was when they were trying to throw out like mail-in ballots, right?
Yeah, they tried to throw out 200,000 Democratic mail-in ballots. If anyone's curious, when they're saying 200,000 ballots, and specifically from like Milwaukee County and like the two major counties that are like strong Democratic strongholds, they tried to basically disqualify 200,000 mail-in ballots.
Yeah, places where, by the way, like people largely kept COVID rules, right? So people were largely social distancing, businesses were largely closed, people were largely working from home. Like, so having drop boxes and mail-in ballots made incredible amounts of sense during that time. But just to be clear, so that's the ruling they were waiting on, that 200,000 people's votes would be removed. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so I think what's important to note is also Kenneth Chesborough is from Wisconsin, right? The architect
Come
of
on.
the fake
Come
fake
on.
elector scheme is from Wisconsin. He was in the room recording on December 14th, 2020, when this was
Wait.
going on. They pressured them all and they said, if you guys don't meet here on December 14th, 2020, and you don't sign these documents, and then the lawsuits going through the court to disqualify those 200,000 ballots are won by Trump, then it's your fault that Trump loses Wisconsin and Trump won't be president, is
First of all,
essentially what they told them.
Cheeseboro from being from Wisconsin is something I'm glad that I heard today. I was unaware of that. That makes an incredible amount of sense. But this was December 14th. Is that right? Is it when they
Yeah,
signed the documents?
December 14th is the day that electors need to cast their votes. Like
Okay.
in every state. And what Cheeseborough, when you read the email, like his design of the fake elector scheme, one thing he's very specific on is that on December 14th, 2020, so in all these states where the slates of fake electors, they all had to meet. And he said, specifically, you have to do it exactly like the real electors, on the same day, same time, meet, record it. And that's what he did in his own state. Kenneth Chesborough actually showed up and recorded it.
As somebody who is regularly accused of like ignoring red flags or seeing what they want to see, like all of these, every time they talk about these fake electors in any state, it's always just baffling to me that somebody came to these people and was like, hey, look, we got to set a different set of electors and we're going to do it exactly the same. Like, you have to do it in this order. And by the way, it's super secret. We're not going to tell anybody. And everybody was just like, yeah, of course that's what we have to do. Of course that's how like our Constitution was written and how our government works, is that you have these secret bodies of voters that meet secretly and keep their secret that they met, so at the last second that they can come forward as a slate of electors. The red flags were there, but when you want to believe the lies that you're being told by Trump and his team, I do have some sympathy for some of these people.
Yeah. On November 30th, 2020, so Tony Evers, who's the Democratic governor of Wisconsin, certified Biden's victory, authorizing the state's Democratic electors to gather at the state capitol on December 14th. So here's this Andrew Hitt, the chair of the Wisconsin RNC's story. He says he got a call from someone within the Republican National Committee days before Evers certified the state's votes. He said he was asked for a list of Republican electors in Wisconsin, which Hitt said made him suspicious. Okay, so I guess he understood something was going on.
Yeah.
So he said, I was already concerned that they were going to try to say that the Democratic electors were not proper in Wisconsin because of fraud, Hitt said. But Hitt said he didn't believe that there had been widespread fraud in the state. Hitt said that he was advised by the state GOP's outside legal counsel on December 4th, 2020, to gather the other Republican electors at the Capitol on December 14th as a contingency, sign a document claiming they were, quote, the duly elected and qualified electors for president for Wisconsin. In case a court would overrule the election here in Wisconsin, Hitt said he was told. I mean, come on, though. Like, it comes down to falsifying a document. I mean, this is what they're all in trouble for. You're claiming they're the duly elected and qualified electors for the president. Like, I don't know.
When we go back, when these stories emerge, and then it goes back, and this article, you said CBS News, is doing a great job laying out all the details. But, like, there's been so many insane things that have happened since Donald Trump ran for president and then was president, that I think a lot of times I forget exactly what happened. I forgot that the Supreme Court was pretty close on this. It was a 4-3 decision. And that's absolute insanity, that there were 3 judges in Wisconsin who were like, yeah, we shouldn't allow mail-in ballots like during COVID. We shouldn't have allowed that. That was illegal because it happened too late. That's a scary thing to realize, that Wisconsin Supreme Court was 1 vote away from saying, yeah, Trump can just steal Wisconsin. That's fine. Let's keep in mind that what's not being alleged here is nobody is alleging that these votes were fake. that these weren't real people, that they weren't allowed to vote. What they're alleging is that they changed the law in order to allow people to vote. So again, this is Republicans trying to say we shouldn't, we want to suppress the voters, and Democrats saying everybody should vote. It's always that. It's always that way. It's always Republicans trying to limit the amount of voters, and it's always Democrats saying everybody should vote. And if you just take them put them in the worst light. Democrats want more people to vote because that benefits them. Republicans want less people to vote because it benefits them. That's fine. Like, take them both in their worst light. What's the right decision? Let everybody vote. Like, whether it helps you or not, the right decision is to let everybody vote. That's how we had things set up here. Or I guess not how we had things set up, how we've evolved to have things set up. And it's been progressives all along the way from 1776 till now trying to give everybody the right to vote, and Republicans, or I guess conservatives, all along the way saying we want less people to vote, less vote, less vote, less vote.
Well, and that's, what's her name? The lady that made it onto the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, Protasiewicz, I believe her name is. And
You must have nailed that.
This is traditionally a gerrymandered state legislature that has they have been fighting to not redraw maps in Wisconsin. That's what we were talking about with Governor Tony Evers and them just saying, okay, we don't want an actual third party to redraw maps. Let's just take the ones that the Democratic governor had submitted a couple of years ago and use those. Because they're so scared if if they actually are redrawn professionally, they're going to lose even more of their gerrymandered districts than they might otherwise lose. These are the same people that were going to just impeach Protasiewicz to keep her from being able to vote in whether maps needed to be redrawn. Like, their solution was just to use their supermajority to do some sort of impeachment process to get rid of her. Like, this is a state that's turning blue, that's population is turning blue. This is not unlike exactly what's happening in Arizona. And this is the fight, like the death rattle of the Republican Party. When your party is based on, when every voting rights case going on in these swing states has to do with Republicans trying to stop people from being able to vote, you need to ask yourselves why.
Yeah, that'll be as going through this outline, that will be kind of a theme today, is drawing the dichotomy between Republicans holding on to like either special rights or defending a billionaire's ability to continue to defraud our country, and Democrats saying like, hey, we should hold everybody to the same standard. This will be a consistent theme, and it should be the consistent theme going through to November of this year. This should be how Democrats campaign. They need to point out consistently that Republicans think there should be different rules for different people.
So here's the interesting, this gets weirder. Well, we actually know this from the other side, right? Which was they were looking for someone to then fly this fake set of electors from Wisconsin in either a private jet or public to DC. So on January 4th, according to internal emails, some of the Trump campaign were panicking because they believed the fake electors' documents from both Michigan and Wisconsin hadn't arrived in Vice President Mike Pence's Senate office. A colleague soon texted this guy, Andrew Hitt, quote, freaking Trump idiots want someone to fly original elector papers to the Senate president, end quote. To which Hitt texted back, this is just nuts. With 2 days remaining before January 6th electoral college count, Hitt said that because the Trump campaign had appealed the Wisconsin ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court, he still believed there was a chance Trump could win the state. Which, yeah, I mean, Republicans are used to having rulings in their favor, right? Like, I mean, we see now, like, what Wisconsin Supreme Court was up to, how they were the legislature was going to consider impeaching Protasiewicz just to keep having maps from her vote being counted and maps being redrawn.
Right.
So it's pretty reasonable then to assume, especially with all the ProPublica reporting about the Supreme Court, how we know they're basically being bribed for rulings, that it was possible that this could happen.
And again, what they thought was going to happen and what they were asking for to happen was to throw out over 200,000 votes of people who actually voted. Again, nobody's claiming these 200,000 people voted for somebody they didn't want to. Nobody is saying that these people weren't allowed to vote. Nobody is saying, like, there's no accusation here other than they voted in a way differently than they had voted previously. And because of that, Trump's campaign and Trump's team was pretty close in having the Wisconsin vote overturned, and Donald Trump winning a state despite the fact that he lost by 20,000 votes. It wasn't that far away.
Yeah, and then Kenneth Chesborough is just all over this too. On January 25th, a woman named Alicia Gunther, then a law school student on break and working part-time for the Wisconsin Republican Party, flew Wisconsin's fake elector documents to Washington. She said she was tasked with bringing the paperwork to Ken Chesborough. That's why this guy is literally a state's witness in like 5 or 6 cases.
Yeah, he's in
at
everything.
This point. Like, this man is single-handedly burying Trump. So she said she found him with the aid of a selfie he'd sent her, and then I don't even whatever.
He had a cheese head
sending
on.
this and then she handed off. So then she handed off the fake elector documents. Listen to this. Quote, he kind of took a dramatic step back and looked at me and said, You might just have made history. Like, Kenneth Chesborough thinks that he is doing like the most righteous coup of all time here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he thinks he's on like a holy mission, essentially. This is why he showed up on January 6th following Alex Jones around. It's his own belief in what he's doing that essentially is going to end up burying them all. That connects these people to Alex Jones on January 6th. So, it's Kenneth Chesborough's desperation to be everywhere that is such a problem now.
Let's be fair to Kenneth Chesborough. She did kind of make history. It just wasn't for the reason that he thought. But yeah, this is history. This is something that hasn't happened before, but not in a good way. Kenny.
Yeah, and then and we've gone over this before, but just to review. So what happened then? Chesborough told investigators that he delivered the Wisconsin documents to Capitol Hill, an aide to Wisconsin. Yep, and this is where Ron John gets incriminated. An aide to Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson tried to arrange to get the fake elector slates from Wisconsin and Michigan to Pence, according to a text presented to the January 6th Select Committee. But in the text chain, Pence's aide responded, do not give that to him. Like, Pence was literally dodging, like, trying to avoid having these documents handed to him because he did not want them. But
Ron John has been questioned about this many times, where he's like, I didn't know anything about that. They're like, well, what about your aide was supposed to get it to Pence. It was going to go to you and then get it to Pence. He's like, oh, well, I mean, I didn't know what the document was. I was just like, yeah, if somebody needs to get something to Pence, get it. Like, come on, Ron John. Ron John's dumb, but he's not that dumb.
Well, that's also why it's so funny that Trump all weekend, like, he gave one of his, I swear, just as somebody who's watched every Trump rally since he started doing them, I think that this had to have been one of the longest speeches I ever saw him give on Saturday. And, he's, and also in other documents saying, like, can you believe that Fani Willis and Jack Smith wanted to indict senators? U.S. It's like, yes, we can. All of the witnesses against you, Trump, are testifying that they were involved.
Beautiful.
Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to go over that. And again, that was on, if you want to go look it up, that was an interview done on 60 Minutes last night. And it's really interesting. So if anyone has any interest in checking that out, I do recommend it. It is interesting.
Yeah. Somebody in the comments said, are we not going to talk about the voter registration fraud in Michigan? That was based on a Gateway Pundit article. I did see it. They don't seem to have any sources. In fact, the people who we thought might have been their sources are saying none of it's true. So for those who think that massive Michigan voter fraud story from Gateway Pundit was true, I would just say, at the very least, it's unsourced, and at worst, it seems to be a flat
I don't
out
even
lie.
know what. Yeah, I'm not even aware of what you're talking. Like, what is it?
So yeah, they had it. It was, I think it was last week. They had the headline was, "Now we have proof: massive 2020 voter fraud uncovered in Michigan." This is from Washington Post. Responding, the story referenced thousands of fraudulent ballots caught by Muskegon City Clerk Ann Meisch. Grateful readers deluged her office with hundreds of calls hailing her as a hero, but unfortunately, Meisch said it wasn't true. According to the police reports, the Attorney General's office, in an interview with Meisch, an employee of a voter registration drive company, had submitted to the Muskegon City Clerk thousands of voter registration applications weeks before the 2020 election, some with faked signatures and faulty addresses. Meisch's staff spent hundreds of hours weeding out the bad applications. The guns the police... there was something about guns. The guns the police found were legally registered to a landlord who had nothing to do with the registration drive. The prepaid phones and cash cards were given to temporary employees to contact new voter prospects. So there were no fraudulent ballots, Meisch said in an interview. Not a single one that anyone in my office was aware of. So
Oh yeah, that's been going on for a while. That's not. I've heard that story. That's not the first time this has come up. That whole story that you just told. Yeah, I've heard that before, and it was debunked before, or just they said, yeah, they've investigated. There's nothing there.
Yeah, and then Gateway Pundit just like runs the news story. I can't remember exactly what Gateway Pundit. I think it was that they had confirmed with Meisch's office or something, and then there was a landlord in an apartment that one of the people involved in the voter registration had, and like there were weapons there, silencers and bags of prepaid cash cards. They have an explanation for all of that. It's all pretty reasonable. So again, just like Donald Trump will grasp at straws. I'm reminded of when David thought his story about Eddie being the attorney for Harrison Floyd was going to be a big like David thought like this is my chance to jump into the Trump inner circle. I'm gonna blow this whole thing. And then they told him, they're like, all right, thanks. Like he said he talked to Harrison Floyd, and Harrison Floyd was like, thanks, and that was it. That's what happens every time. Like these massive stories that are leaked and are pushed every single time wind up not being true. But you guys just keep moving on to the next one. You're like, that one didn't pan out. We'll move to the next one. We're almost 4 years now. Almost 4 years. I guess we're going on 4 years, not almost, of these stories. Every single time they turn out not to be true. But you'll find one, guys. You got it. You got this.
Guys, tap the screen. Let's see. Where are we at? Yeah, let's get to 55K. If you would like to donate to us, we're not accepting gifts through the end of the month. Please donate here. Leave us a funny message. We'll read it periodically throughout the show. Again, push the copy link to share the live, or please do share the live with your favorite or least favorite Republicans. We would love to have a chat with someone. And then do you want to do the sneaker story now? I'm open.
Yeah, I'm pulling up just to make sure I haven't missed comments yet. My phone's
The
not
worst
really
thing
loaded.
about the sneaker story is that he's selling is $18 shoes for $400, which is the worst part of the whole thing.
I think the worst part is the sneakers. A lot of people said it was a knockoff of the Air Force Ones. I think they look more like Adidas to me.
Well, did you see
kind of
14 under the articles? They're shoes from Temu. They're $18. Anybody can buy them. And then he just added a T to them.
I've seen those. Are you saying, did they decide that those were the same? They're exactly the same? I saw that post. I wasn't sure if it was from the same place.
Well, I mean, that's essentially what I've gathered is that that they're saying like these are just shoes bought in bulk and then modified with like a T on the side. Yeah, just
here's the truth.
And sold for $400.
The truth is, the shoes are terrible. He got booed by the people at SneakerCon. He also said that there's like lines out the door for his shoes. There were lines of people trying to get in SneakerCon. This was a surprise. This wasn't announced that Trump was going to be at SneakerCon. It was leaked to like a few different people, like a few different influencers, and they got a pair of the shoes. The shoes are awful. They're not popular, but they're probably going to be worth a good amount of money. They've like on the resale market through eBay. We've already seen, I think one sold for over $1,000 already. One sold for $9,000. That was one of the autographed pairs. Anytime you are a famous person, and it's specifically like Donald Trump's fame is going to age in a really, really weird way. If Donald Trump winds up guilty of all the things that we think he's guilty of, the price of these shoes skyrockets, right? Because if he winds up in prison, can't run a business anymore, and he put out this limited edition set of shoes, they're actually going to be worth a good amount of money. I'm kind of bummed I didn't buy them. But I don't know what the idea was behind it. I mean, he's just going to make a little bit of money off of them. It's sold on this website. What's it like, Mission 47 or something, which Trump claims he doesn't own, but he definitely owns. Like he owns the parent company that sells the shoes and the cologne. He's just lying about not owning it. Like his team came out and they're like, this has nothing to do with the Trump campaign. I guess that's fair, but Trump owns this, and it was a bizarre move. But probably not his worst, probably his best business move in quite a while, to be honest. How many were made? I think 1,000, and they're all numbered. So each one will have some sort of, I don't know where they're numbered. I'm not a big sneakerhead, but somewhere on the sneaker it'll be numbered out of 1,000. These will mostly not be worn, except for by David when he spends his children's college money on these shoes. But real ugly shoes. Real proud of Donald Trump for rolling those out. And good for you for turning a $20 shoe into a $400 shoe.
So is there anything else that you want to cover about that, or is that in general, are we good on that? Like I think that when I say the shoes, he basically bought 1,000 pairs of shoes on Temu. We could all make our own and tape little T's to them. But yeah, the ending price, like you said, especially if this ends up being an iconic year for him or whatever the case, like they could end up being worth something. It's definitely a better investment than like buying a piece of what you think is his suit or what.
Yeah, look,
whatever else has gone on.
There's nothing he won't hawk. Like he is Ronco. He's just, his entire existence now is one big infomercial. He gets on, he shares his message, he asks people to send him money, he sells a bunch of dumb shit that for whatever reason people don't care about. Here's the deal. Watch these shoes. If you're watching on eBay, they're gonna spike. It's gonna be way too expensive now, and then in like 5 or 6 years, the price of these will probably come down to a normal range. Buy them then. I think it's actually I think that's actually going to be a good investment, especially if he winds up guilty of a bunch of things. Airborne Mom sent a donation and said, "This is for the fund for you and Felice's golden sneakers," which I like.
Oh my gosh, what if we did get them? I couldn't. I wouldn't wear them. I would I would save them, obviously. Like, if anyone actually wears them, then that would be the dumbest move of all time. Because then they lose any value they have. But I guess some people, it's just most important, for people to know that they are supporting Donald Trump. So
yeah. So there's a pair on eBay going for $45,000. Just remember that the eBay asking price is not the real price. You can go through eBay and filter the results and look for. You click on, like, if you use the advanced filters, you go to sold, and there's another button. You have to click both because sometimes things sell, but they're just selling to get the price up. You have to look at like sold and completed, meaning it was delivered and confirmed. And then at that point, I think the most expensive was $1,000. Kyle says, I like to do the cha-cha.
What? I like to do the cha. Thank you,
from
Kyle.
That song. Yeah. And if
I do like that song too. What's that guy's name? Jersey, that made the dance to that. That kid is hilarious. Like, what? It's like his style of, he invented a new way to dance, which is hilarious. Like,
I don't even know what
and
you're
most of it
talking
involves flipping your shoes into the air and spiking them back to the ground.
Wait,
well,
so
you have to understand what we're talking. Well,
I've seen the
that
dance.
song is created by a guy named Freddie. I can't remember his last name, but the song was created by someone and promoted on TikTok. And then the dance is made by another kid on TikTok whose name's like Jersey Joe, I think, or something. And so like his style, the way he dances is just hilarious. Like that's all. It's just, you'd have to see it to understand.
Okay, I'm watching it now. Let's see.
Yeah, he's just funny kid. He's like a 19-year-old kid who like lives in the dorms and like just he's funny.
So wait, did he make this dance up?
Yes.
That's amazing. All right, I like this guy. He just got to follow. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jersey
he's
Joe. Not a terrific dancer, but very
he's just unique because
inventive.
he's so intense and like cares so much.
I
But
didn't know
also
that
the
that
artist who wrote that song is very talented as well. Like seems like Freddie something, I can't remember. But I also recommend, yes, I follow other than politics, like if you saw my feed, you'd be like, what's wrong with her? It's like ballet and dance. Like I'm very into, when I lived in New York, I went to like Broadway shows on the ballet, like all the time. I love dance.
All right.
And cat videos. Also in cat videos.
That's kind of surprising. I don't know. I still don't know you. Every day I learn something new about you.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
I'm
have
very
guessed.
into the arts, very much. You know what
Well,
I
you
mean?
are
I think,
common.
well, I could get into it, but like to me, ballet is the ultimate sport. Like, hear me out. Because like when I play volleyball, like I can yell the F word and like scream and be visibly in pain. I think what goes on in ballet and the way you have to make it look effortless is a literal form of torture. Like, I don't think there is a harder sport than ballet.
I believe you. I don't know anything about ballet. I know that it like fucks up your toes. That's as much as I know. That's
Oh my God, I don't know how these people are doing that. Yeah, it's actual torture. So yeah, I just love, I'm a huge supporter of ballet. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Let's start going in chronological order because we should go over Friday when, the verdict came out. Trump's got to pay, I mean, what is 364 million essentially?
It's a lot of sneakers.
Can't run a business.
Sneakers.
I think I have just to read it off because I want to make sure I
Can't run a business for what, like 3? I think it was 3 years. Is that right?
Trump can't run a business for 3 years. I don't think Alan Weisselberg can serve as Alan Weisselberg. Finally, I just can't. At any minute, I'm waiting for Alan Weisselberg to turn on Trump. Like, I don't know what the punishment this man is enduring.
Yeah.
I've never, like, the most loyal person to Trump. Michael Cohen is second, but first is definitely Alan Weisselberg. Like, this man's life is coming apart so that he can defend him.
Yeah, and I think Weisselberg probably was hoping Donald Trump would win so he could be pardoned. And who knows what's gonna happen. But I don't know if Weisselberg will live that long.
He's definitely. Oh yeah. He was so. I mean, rumored or whatever I heard. While he was so ill in prison and like, just. And I feel like that was the only time you could see that like possibly something was bothering Trump. Not to say that I think he has deep empathy, but when Alan Weisselberg was sitting in prison, Trump would mention that during his rallies, actually, more than I ever saw him care that somebody was in jail or suffering because of Trump was when Alan Weisselberg was in jail.
Yeah, well, that was the guy that was responsible for all of his scams. I heard, I don't remember if it was Popak or somebody on Midas Touch, and I don't know why they're ruling this out, but I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, well, he's not Bernie Madoff. Okay, he's not Bernie Madoff in that, like, he's probably not as smart as Bernie Madoff, but, like, this is starting to look an awful lot like a Ponzi scheme.
Well, and actually, I think that is one of the, like, the most misunderstood things that we keep hearing is, like, if I hear one more time on Fox News, oh, this was a victimless crime. No, Trump defrauded the people of New York City. Like, what happened was Letitia James just made the citizens of New York for $470 million, like that they can use for programs, for services. When Eric Adams is screaming that because they're a sanctuary city, they need more funding. Do you think the 370, which with interest, 470 million would have come in kind of handy, that they could have used that during this time?
Yeah, so this was, I dug into this because Trump and every Republican's like, this is completely unfair. It's going to be overturned on appeal. Here's the problem. What Judge Engoron, like, he didn't just come up with that number. This isn't the amount of back taxes. It's not the amount Trump owed. What it is there, built into the law, there is a formula that is used to figure out how much somebody profited off of breaking the law. So when they say, like, there was no that the banks weren't victims, you can argue maybe the banks could have got more fees. Maybe they are the victims. That Trump repaid the loans. Fine. But if you commit fraud to obtain loans, to increase your network, whatever you used, like whenever that fraud started, like everything you earned that fraud kicked off is what you have to pay back. That's where this number is coming from. That 370 million, they're saying that money doesn't exist if Donald Trump doesn't commit this fraud. So just to be clear, like, that's what he's being charged with. Every dime, and that works with every crime. There is no crime that lets you keep the money that you made off of the crime. It's not every time they take down a kingpin, they take every dollar that they have, because every dollar in that you make after committing a crime goes back to the government, right? That's just how this works. So Engoron literally just took the information given and plugged it into a formula, and the formula gave him that number. That's it. Like, this is not as complicated or crazy as Republicans want you to think. And how do you overturn that on appeal? Well, the only way this number gets smaller is, one, if they decide that he wasn't guilty for that and they completely throw it out, or two, they find fault in the math. That's it. Those are the only options.
Yeah. So and we're going to go over this all now. I want to make sure we get it all explained, and then everyone understands, so that when you go argue with your family members who are in Trump's cult, that you can get it right. But this also, so first we'll listen to a quote from, remember I showed you guys this book? This is Tristan Snell's book, Taking Down Trump, which he sent a copy to Jay and I. This is the man, one of the only people who successfully prosecuted Trump. And that's what this book is about. 12 rules for prosecuting Donald Trump by someone who did it successfully. And the reason that this comes into play with this judgment that came out on Friday is because the judgment and the statute that the judgment is based on is called the Martin Act. Tristan Snell used the Martin Act to successfully prosecute Trump for the Trump University scam, right? And in the Martin Act, the burden of proof is just a tendency to deceive, a tendency, okay? And here, let's listen to Tristan explain this, because obviously he says it better than I would.
The Associated Press. A little bit of reporting that the Associated Press did regarding these sorts of decisions, these sorts of investigations, these trials. I'm just not finding it in this pile of papers that I have in front of me. But basically, they said they went back over 70 years and looked at all the cases that have been tried under this rule 36 or 6312, which is used here, which doesn't have to show harm done. That's not the burden. You don't have to show that anybody was hurt by your practices. There's nobody you defrauded specifically. But they went back and they looked at cases over 70 years, I believe it was about 150 cases, and found that there was no case where there was a ban on doing business where there wasn't harm shown. So even though the threshold is harm shown, in the past, it has only been used to ban someone doing business when it's been shown that somebody was hurt. Say you're selling cosmetics that are poisoning you. There's somebody that was hurt there, the cosmetics company gets banned. Is this fair to go after Donald Trump like this in this environment? Is my question.
Look, I think what you said about the statute is absolutely true. Tristan Snell, who just joined us at the table and has used the statute.
I was going to introduce him, but we can introduce him now as well. Tristan Snell is here. He's used the statute. Well, let's ask Tristan. You use this, 6312, in the Trump University suit. Yes. A university that was scamming people, wasn't actually giving them useful information for them to do business.
And wasn't licensed and wasn't a university, et cetera. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, is it fair?
Look, the thing is that the notion that 6312 is this sort of weird thing that shouldn't be applied and so forth and so on, this statute and the statute that was based on, which is called the Martin Act, which may be the one that people are more familiar with, the Martin Act applies to securities. The Martin Act was put on the books in New York about 100 years ago. We have a lot of case law to support this. This statute is used by the AG's office every day against all sorts of other frauds and misdeeds. The legal standard is whether there is a tendency to deceive. That's what it is. And the legislature in New York made a public policy choice to say that that was an important weapon for the AG's office to have to vindicate the public good in this situation.
And it seems like what Judge Engoron found was there was intention, not just a tendency, there was intention to deceive.
Which is even higher than they needed. It's basically if the bar is here, the evidence went way over the bar.
I mean, no, I'm looking.
Yeah, and what Judge Engoron actually said was like the fraud leaps off the page and boggles the conscience.
Yeah,
that was a literal quote from the ruling. And like what they're saying, the bar of the Martin Act is just there just needs to be a tendency to deceive.
Yeah,
and,
let me add to that real quick. So this is from University of Maryland Law. These are the prohibited. There's 7. They have listed 7 prohibited acts under the Martin Act, and exactly what Felice is saying. Like they are broad. Like it does not take a super specific reason to use the Martin Act. So number 1, employing any device, scheme, or artifice to defraud. Absolutely happened. Obtaining money or property by means of any false pretense, representation, or promise. That's exactly what he's accused of, and it was proved. Making or attempting to make a fictitious or pretended purchase or sale of securities or commodities, employing or seeking to employ any deception, misrepresentation, concealment, suppression, fraud, false pretense, or false promise of the purchase, exchange, investment advice, or sale of securities or commodities, engaging in any practice or transaction of or course of business relating to the purchase, exchange, investment advice, or sale of securities or commodities. We can skip that because that doesn't really matter to here. Selling or offering for sale or attempting to sell securities without registering as a broker, dealer, or salesman, violating any provision of the Martin Act. So any of those set really 6 reasons, and then the 7th is violating any of those provision, allows you to be sued under the Martin Act. Like clearly what Donald Trump did is covered under the Martin Act. Like you said, and like Engoron said, like it's so clear. What did you say? It boggles his mind. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is mind-boggling, I would say. I don't know what boggle means. What does boggle mean?
So, and then I think that one of the other interesting things that came out, like on the panel that I was watching when this verdict first came out, it was Tristan Snell had just joined. That was Lisa Rubin, the legal analyst that covers Trump's cases for MSNBC. And the other person who was at that table is Suzanne Craig, who's a very, very famous, very intelligent reporter for the New York Times. And listen to what Suzanne Craig has been saying, which if you read a lot of New York Times financial reporting, this is not the first time this has been mentioned, but it is hilarious. Right now, for the first time, there's a closed door audit of Donald Trump going on at the IRS, the first one ever done. And it's looking like, in addition to this fine, this fine 364 plus 100 million in interest, essentially, Trump is on the hook. Remember we went over the other day about the $50 million loan that came out of this case. What came out is when Trump wasn't allowed to be in charge of his own businesses, they appointed a court monitor who was a former federal judge named Barbara Jones. And Barbara Jones has been going through the financial receipts and finding all of the tax evasion. So this is Suzanne Craig talking about the IRS, the current audit of Donald Trump, the closed door audit going on at the IRS.
He's got now huge financial pressures on him.
Yeah.
This today is obviously the biggest one, but we've also we've written about an IRS audit that has been going on that is happening behind closed doors at the IRS. We don't have visibility into it, but the last reporting we did show that if it goes against him, it could cost him more than $100 million.
Wow.
And who knows what else could be out there. There's just things that you just never know. So Can he meet this? I don't think he has probably enough cash if he's going to appeal to put it up. We'll find out. But he could get an appeal bond. But this is devastating. This is a real number, and it's on.
And the other question to think about, and I didn't record this part, but what they were talking about is like, where will Trump get this money from, right? Like if he needs a loan, is he going to get it from another country or a corporation that has ties to another country or someone who's running another country? Who will he be beholden to now, right? When you borrow that kind of money from someone, you basically, now you're in their pocket. So the question is we're talking about 364 million plus 100 million in interest plus their latest news behind this closed door audit. It could be another $100 million that he's been evading in taxes over many years. And again, yes, I just wanted to clarify, someone brought this up, but yes, Barbara Jones, the court appointed monitor, Trump agreed to. Trump had some sort of friendly relationship with her. And yeah, it was agreed to by Trump's team and by the prosecution as well. So it's not like someone that Trump didn't know that was just, forced on him. It's someone that Trump does know and agreed would be a fair court-appointed monitor. And that's namely over many things, like she's the one that found the $50 billion loan that Trump said one of his companies loaned to the other. That makes no sense. So yeah, as a result of that, he's now being audited for the first time ever by the IRS and is in even more financial trouble.
Of course, the response to this, which we all expected, is that truckers all across the internet would be threatening to stop delivering goods to New York.
Oh well,
that's what I thought. By the way, and I added this story, I think, to the end. Maybe I didn't add it.
I added it. I have it in the
about
outline,
the trucker changing his mind, like backtracking.
Well, do you want to go over that now, or should we go on with Letitia? I want to finish going over the verdict. Yeah, whatever. If you want to do this, yeah, that's fine.
What I wanted to do is just show, we'll do the trucker stuff later, but the response from the Trump team and in Trump land, that's really what you wait for, right? Like the judgment comes out. If you want to try to not be partisan, you're going to wait and see, what evidence are they presenting? None. Fox News had on Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, to defend it. I'll play, but I just want you to listen to the difference between...
And Turley was on and had nothing too. As well. Turley was on Fox as well and was just like, I think what his exact words were, which I think I have the quote, but he basically said something like, New Yorkers need to decide if this is the kind of government they want. And it's like, what?
So here's son of a bitch. Kevin O'Leary, and he's exactly what you're saying. Gonna say the same type of shit.
You may have read about it. Crooked judge. He's a crooked judge. By a radical left-wing judge, was a lawless and unconstitutional atrocity. It's a sham case. There were no victims, no defaults, no damages, no complaints, no nothing. There was nothing.
Well, that was former President Donald Trump slamming the judge who fined him more than $350 million in that New York civil suit. He's far from the only one questioning the merits of that case. Our next guest says that it might spur a mass exodus business-wise from the Empire State. Let's bring in O'Leary Ventures chairman and Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary. It looks like all roads have brought us to Mr. Wonderful this morning. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. So part of the judgment here, it's not just the dollar amount. Donald Trump is barred from operating a business in New York for 3 years. One of my questions is, all right, let's say this all stands 3 years down the line. Why on earth would he want to come back here to do business after this?
Well, this case really isn't just about Donald Trump. This is an assault on the 11th sector of the S&P 500, which is real estate. Step back and think about what this means for the state of New York. Development of real estate creates millions of jobs in America. And once the buildings are stabilized and rented out or used for commercial real estate or whatever, they generate cash flow and they're put into REITs. And you and I invest in those. Retirees invest in them. And that's how they get income. That's why it became the 11th sector of the S&P. It's so important to the American economy. Very few sectors generate as much cash as this does. And so if you're a developer, you're an entrepreneur, you go to a bank and you say, look, I want to borrow $200 million to build a building. And they say, well, what assets do you have we can secure this loan against? And you point to a building you built before. And you haggle and you argue about the value of that building. This goes on in every city on earth. That's how real estate developers who are entrepreneurs and take risk borrow money. That's exactly what happened here. Now, all of a sudden, after this is built successfully and finished, for some reason, this judge takes it upon himself to fine this developer. Forget that it's Trump. This is not about Trump anymore.
Oh, sure.
If you're a developer and you see this happen in the state of New York, why would you take the risk?
All right. So this is the Republican defense, and it's always the Republican defense for everything. And it's one more, just further proof that Republicans do not give a fuck about you and I. They care about protecting billionaires. This is the defense. The defense is, if you don't let people break the law, if you don't let people commit fraud, nobody's going to do business in New York. And I think this is a perfect time to point out that Donald Trump wasn't successful, like New York wasn't successful. New York real estate wasn't successful because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump was successful for what was happening, or because of what was happening in New York. People wanted to be in New York. The stock exchange is in New York. You have all sorts of business, whether early on, mercantiles, now you have entertainment, you have news. New York is expensive because people want to be in New York City, not the other way around. Don't let them trick you into thinking that nobody's going to buy real estate in New York because they do this to Donald Trump. No, what they're saying is now people are going to have to be careful. And guess what? People still want to live in New York City. Those buildings are going to be available no matter what. There's going to be a need to buy buildings, to renovate buildings, no matter what in New York City. That, like, these types of fear tactics are just Kevin O'Leary saying, hey, we have all these loopholes and you guys are starting to close them and we don't like that. Well, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit if millionaires and billionaires make a little less money? Maybe that'll drop the prices of rent in New York. Maybe we won't have such inflated numbers. Maybe it'll become reasonable for a fireman or a teacher to live in New York again. Maybe, just maybe, that'll happen. But you're talking about the people, these appraisers, these real estate investors that are simply responsible for driving the prices up, right? They're adding another layer of income that needs to be met in order for these ventures to work out. Like, that's the Republican argument, that we have to protect real estate investors. Okay.
I mean, Kevin O'Leary's a billionaire protecting other billionaires. Kevin O'Leary, who got rich off Hooked on Phonics. Oski.
You know what he did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That was his?
Yeah. One of the things, which largely has been debunked as a way of teaching people to read, but whatever. Like, this is just billionaires protecting billionaires. Like, there's no defense. Like, you falsify a business document, it's a crime, right? Like, that's the bottom line. So I think that is a good summary, and I won't play, I want to play some of Letitia James's statement, because I think this will.
Donald Trump and the other defendants were ordered to pay $463.9 million. That represents $363.9 million in disgorgement, plus $100 million in interest, which will continue to increase every single day until it is paid. Donald Trump, the former chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, Alan Weisselberg, and the former controller of the Trump Organization, Jeffrey McConney, are each banned from serving as an officer or director of any New York company for 3 years. Mr. Weisselberg and Mr. McConney are also banned for life from serving in a financial management role in any New York company. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump are banned from serving as an officer or director of any New York company for 2 years. And Donald Trump and his companies are banned from applying for loans from any New York bank or financial institution for 3 years. A new independent director of compliance will be created at the Trump Organization to ensure the company establishes internal protocols and meets financial reporting obligations. And the current independent external monitor will continue to oversee the company's financial dealings and ensure this fraud cannot continue.
That's so the independent court monitor, that's Barbara Jones. That's who she's talking about. So Barbara Jones is going to stay on in addition to them having to appoint a compliance director as well to keep them honest. So
and just so we're clear, disgorgement, when they're talking about disgorgement, that's what we're talking about. Like any profits that you made from your fraudulent activity, that's the disgorgement. I would just challenge anybody who thinks this is an unfair ruling to explain to me why somebody, after committing fraud, should be allowed to keep the profits from that fraud. Just ask yourself that question. Take Trump out of it, like O'Leary said. Take Trump out of this. When you commit fraud, should you be allowed to keep the profits from that fraud? I think the answer to most people would be no. But if you're arguing Trump should be able to keep his money, then that's essentially what you're saying, is that there's really no repercussion for fraud. If he keeps that money, then it's okay to do fraud. That's the whole point. Like, he did that fraud so he could make money. That was the whole point. And by the way, I would also like to
and guys, it's not disgorgement like discourage, right? It's disgorge. So this is going to sound weird, but like engorging, right? If someone engorges themselves, right, they get bigger, right? You're expanding, you're engorging yourself. Like, let's say you overeat.
Somebody
you're a glutton. You're engorging yourself. That's what disgorgement means. Whatever that profit you made while committing a fraud, all that stuff you enriched yourself, you got fat off of. Disgorgement is the opposite of that process, like taking it away from you.
Judge Engorgeron. Dark Trey, that's beautiful. I like that a lot. I thought I had one thing.
I want to play this clip. I think this is the one where Letitia James talks about this isn't a victimless crime. Let's see if we can find that part.
Good evening. Today, justice has been served. Today, we prove that no one is above the law. No matter how rich, powerful, or politically connected you are, everyone must play by the same rules. We have a responsibility to protect the integrity of the marketplace. And for years, Donald Trump engaged in deceptive business practices and tremendous fraud. Donald Trump falsely, knowingly inflated his net worth by billions of dollars to unjustly enrich himself, his family, and to cheat the system. Donald Trump may have authored the art of the deal, but he perfected the art of the steal. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, illegal. And he did all of this with the help of the other defendants, his 2 adult sons and senior executives at the Trump Organization. And so, after 11 weeks of trial, we showed the staggering extent of his fraud and exactly how Donald Trump and the other defendants deceived banks, insurance companies, and other financial institutions for their own personal gain. We proved just how much Donald Trump, his family, and his company unjustly benefited from his fraud. Today, the court, once again, ruled in our favor and in favor of every hard-working American who plays by the rules. Donald Trump and the other defendants were ordered to pay $463.9 million. That represents 300.
I think we already heard the second part. Here, I have one more I want to play.
Real quick, I need to just read a comment from Amber. Amber sent a donation and wants, this question is definitely for me, asking, is Felice talking about erections? Yes, she was. That's exactly what she was talking about.
That's why I didn't want to say that, but it is a good way to remember what disgorgement is, right? Like something is engorged with, I don't know, blood flow, massive amounts of blood flow, let's say. Then disgorgement is the opposite of that process. So,
and you pop the top, and then
it's a way to never forget what disgorgement is. There, now, well, none of us will ever be able to forget. Oh wait,
I've said it once. I'll say it again. Teacher Felice is my favorite Felice.
It's awkward, but
The other
oh wait, no, that's exactly the one I played. Here, let me play this. Sorry, I was about to play the same clip again.
white collar financial fraud is not a victimless crime. When the powerful break the law and take more than their fair share, there are fewer resources available for working people, small businesses, and families. And everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank about how much money they have in order to get a mortgage to buy a home. Companies, financial...
Like, that is the bottom line. Stop saying it's a victimless crime. Like, as long as you're rich and as long as the banks are in on your fraud, that we all, like, this is $370 million essentially that was made off of a fraud. Definitely the average citizen in New York is harmed by this crime.
Right. Yeah. Every dollar that he's making off this, that increases the price. Like, I'm so tired of Republicans pretending that these billionaires who make this money that it's earned and it doesn't hurt anybody. Like, when billionaires have billions, that hurts you. I don't know why we can't get on board with this as a country. I don't know why, like, this is a disputed fact. Like, when a billionaire hoards money, or let's stop calling Trump a billionaire because he's probably not. But when they hoard money and they commit fraud like this, it hurts everybody. It creates a bigger wage disparity. It may in New York, it likely caused the pricing in certain neighborhoods to go up. It likely priced some people out of their houses. It forced people to move out of New York City. This type of stuff has far-reaching consequences.
That's what she means when she said that she's protecting the marketplace. Like that, that's exactly, people are being harmed in a marketplace, and it is the government's job to protect against that.
Will says post carpet you have disgorgement. People are loving the disgorgement.
But wait, post carpet?
Yeah, that's a shot at me.
Post carpet. Oh, I get it. Okay, got it. We're gonna never hear the end of the.
And the Rug. Hey, Rug, how are you? Good to see you. There's right on time.
And I want to find, because it's better than me just playing all these. I think I have. I made like I found them. Okay, yeah, I made clips like of Trump's. So Trump again, I don't know why he keeps doing this. When the ruling came out on Friday and he wanted to give a presser to complain that it's a victimless crime and nothing's ever happened, again he decided to do that at the Palm Beach airport. No, just kidding. He lives next to the Palm Beach airport. I don't know why after the first press conference when no one could hear your words, you then decided to give another. Maybe it's because he has nothing real to say. This one, it was nighttime, so you could hear a little better. Fewer planes were landing every 5 seconds, but it is hilarious. Here, let me play you this. This is just a compilation I made of like Trump's whining.
They've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. All comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a witch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in... Which
is super interesting. Like, what did you think of the MAGA talking point this weekend, starting on Friday? All of a sudden, Russia's a bad place again. I think maybe because they can't deny it since he offed Alexei Navalny, and there's like no way to ignore it. But these are the people who are saying Putin's a misunderstood good guy. Like all the last, for however long this is going on, Putin's a misunderstood good guy who just wants us, to negotiate peace, and by negotiate with Ukraine, which is just taking over Ukraine. And we all just need to understand that about Putin. But then on Friday, after Navalny died, it's like the narrative did a 180. And now MAGA's yelling the same thing, like everything going on in Russia is happening here too. It's like,
well, it's split though, because you have like, there's those people that have been co-opted by Putin, and they don't really they're late. Like the my favorite Gunther Eagleman. Like there's people who are still like pro Putin though. They haven't got the message yet that like Navalny being poisoned was bad. They haven't figured it. So they're just like, no, we do that too. Our government does that too. We're all the same. Like so it's like half of Trump land is admitting it's bad. The other half is like, no. It's Zelensky's still the bad guy. It's been a very confusing weekend for MAGA Twitter because they're all over the fucking place.
Yeah, they have no idea what the talking point is. I also think that interview Tucker Carlson did really messed them up, where Putin is like singing G's praises, Tucker's trying to get Putin to say China's the bad one, I'm the good one, I'm on your side. Putin's like, no, you guys are idiots for like thinking about like not trading with China. That's very unintelligent of you. Like, it's like the mixed they can't control the narrative anymore. Republican messaging used to be very on point. Now it's just a series of conspiracy theories that are going off in every direction, and no one's on the same page anymore.
The problem with all of their theories is when it comes time to put them into play, like smart people are like, all right, this definitely isn't going to work. If you're going to say like we're just going to make everything in America, like that sounds really good. It's a great bumper sticker. It's a nice thing to like tweet on the internet. It's a nice thing to say with your MAGA friends. But like, how are you going to do that when it comes time? Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to make everything in America? You can't. Not for any reasonable price. That's the problem with MAGA. Is MAGA's an ideology where, like, if you follow through on it, it makes no sense and it'll hurt people.
Yeah, the word, when you hear the term decouple from China, that's what they're talking about. Like, no. There's no way to manufacture 100% of goods. Yeah. So let's go on. Let's listen to a couple more of Trump's all over the place talking points.
I like
countries.
Sorry. What?
I was just going to say I like the term decouple. I think that's what we should do with China is decouple. And by decouple, I mean it in the real way. Like when people decouple, that's usually a term. It's kind of like a progressive term now for people with. I actually have a friend.
Well, that's conscious uncoupling.
Yeah,
that's what. Remember, it was Gwyneth Paltrow. Sorry, just not to do pop culture, but that was Gwyneth Paltrow and the lead singer of Coldplay, Chris Martin, when they announced their divorce. Gwyneth Paltrow's like, we're doing a conscious uncoupling.
Yeah, so as you decouple with China, that just means you guys like stop fucking each other. And that would be great. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with us staying friendly and we stop fucking them and they stop fucking us. I think that's terrific. I think that's a great term for it.
Yes, on Goop. If you guys don't know what Goop is, that's like a gifting site, what if Paltrow has, where like a bar of soap is like $2,000 and she like gives people recommendations. Yeah, anyways. But yes, you're right. That was her announcement on Goop.
Publix, but you don't see it here. So I just want to say this. You build a great company. There was no fraud. The banks all got their money.
There was absolutely fraud. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
read the ruling?
It was absolutely fraud. Like, unfortunately for you.
100%. They love Trump. They testified that Trump is great.
He's talking about Deutsche Bank, saying like they weren't defrauded by Trump because they made money, which again, that's not who the victim of the crime is, right?
Customer, one of our best customers. They testified beautifully, and the judge knows that. He's just a corrupt person. And they want me out. Oh, let's see if we can get them out. These are radical left Democrats. They're lunatics, and it's election interfering. So I just want to thank you for being here. We'll appeal. We'll be successful, I think, because frankly, if we're not successful, New York State is gone. People are moving out of New York State. And because of this, they're going to move out at a much faster rate. But we're not going to stand for it. So thank you very much. We will get back to work. It's a ridiculous award. Listen, a fine of $355 million for doing a perfect job. Very importantly, and I think ultimately the most important, we've employed tens of thousands of people in New York, and we pay taxes like few other people have ever paid in New York. It's a state that's going...
Well, if that's true, Trump, I'm sure the IRS audit of you will show that.
Bust. It's a state that's going bust because everybody's leaving. And it's all headed up by Biden, who's destroying our country. So this is Russia, this is China, this is what you've been reading about all your lives, and it's happening right here in our country.
Again, none of this had to do with Joe Biden, right? This is a civil lawsuit brought by the Attorney General of the state of New York that has to do with Trump's fraudulent business dealings inside the state of New York. This unequivocally has absolutely nothing to do with Joe Biden.
It's been funny to see Republicans, like the Navalny thing. The Republicans are like, oh, well, you think that it's bad that Putin jailed his political opponent? Like, that's exactly what's happening to Trump. And it's just important to remember, one, that Joe Biden has largely stayed out of this. Even Merrick Garland let Robert Hur stay on that case and allowed him to I guess, publish, I don't know what you say, like that ridiculous finding where he just went on an all-out attack on Joe Biden, like, personally. Joe Biden has stayed largely out of this. It's not even remotely the same as Putin. And it's an effective talking point, I think, for Republicans and MAGA folks, but I don't think this is an effective talking point around the country. I think people are recognizing, like, every single time Donald Trump goes to court now, he's losing. And those losses add up, and people start thinking maybe it's not a conspiracy when over and over and over and over he loses. Like that conspiracy theory line is losing its luster with every single loss.
Yeah, and it's just important to notice this is a man who, whether you like Donald Trump or not, unequivocally committed fraud, large-scale fraud. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of engorgement, if you will. He engorged himself with hundreds of millions of dollars, okay, in fraud. And then these are the same people, right? Let's stay on the line of logic that say this man is qualified to handle classified documents. We already saw what he did in his last presidency, how qualified he is to handle classified documents, that he won't lie, that he won't cheat, that he won't steal. Like, none of this makes any sense. This man cannot run a reputable business.
This is an important reminder, totally not unrelated, but just something that like came to my head this week. It's important to remember that Donald Trump like mishandled a ton of classified documents, right? And it's important to remember that like he didn't want to return them. What's probably most important to remember is that he campaigned on the idea that Hillary Clinton didn't handle her classified documents in a way that should allow her to be president, and then as president changed the laws to make them more strict with how you handle classified documents, and then went and broke those fucking laws that he put in place. I just want to point this out, that this guy speaks consistently out of both sides of his mouth. He 100% believes in rules for thee but not for me. Like, he's reaping the rewards of the laws that he put in place. He campaigned on this shit. Like, I don't understand you guys. Like, how can you guys be like, oh, I love when he campaigned on Hillary and how she didn't handle classified documents, and he said he was going to clean up the government. Okay, well, he did do that. He did make the laws better, and now he's catching criminals who are breaking that law, and it turns out he's just one of them.
Absolutely. The lines of logic. And just also always know, since no such an open and shut case, Trump was never on trial, was never charged with taking documents from the White House, right? No one is historically. Nobody is charged for the taking of documents. It's not the not giving them back that is the problem. It's the obstruction that is the problem. And it's the fraud, right? In every case, what we see with Trump, there's always these themes of fraud, wire fraud, falsifying business documents. Like, it's the same story in every case, but he's qualified to be the president. Nothing. Well, I can't imagine what could go wrong.
The thing about Trump, too, is that, like, he's pretending like this is new, and you guys think that this is new. The MAGA folks, you think this is new. This guy's been committing fraud his entire life. He's been in trouble his entire life, and what you're seeing right now is that as a former president, as somebody who has pissed off a lot of people, like, his connections aren't working. So keeping stories out of the press or being able to settle these entanglements, let's call them, he's not able to do them because he has to stand up there on the stage and deny that he did anything wrong. So he can't then go to these prosecutors and plea. he can't cut a deal with them and admit any guilt because he's campaigning on the idea that this whole fucking thing is a witch hunt. That's why Donald Trump is getting in so much more trouble now than he ever has the rest of his life, because generally speaking, an AG, a district attorney, like, they want this settled. They don't want to risk losing in court. And so if they get somebody to admit they've done something wrong, pay some retribution, that looks good for the district attorney. That's their headline because they are elected officials. Everybody wins, right? And then the person who committed the crime gets to cut a deal and keep working. But Trump can't do that because he's running on a witch hunt. So what you're seeing now is the very first time Donald Trump can't cut a deal with anybody, and he's losing over and over and over.
Amen to that. And so now we'll play my clip. These are clips from Friday after verdict derangement syndrome has set in. This is Junior and Eric's like some of the clips from their interviews they did on Friday. Which Eric, is Eric okay? Somebody check on Eric.
So when you saw that number, what were you thinking?
It's just insane. I mean, it's literally, I mean, there are...
Oh yeah. And tap the screen, guys. Let's keep tapping. Let's see if we can get to 150K.
Well, he really sounds like Don Jr.
That are calling and saying this is crazy.
This is Junior first.
Oh, okay. I thought you said
Junior's
okay.
first.
I'm like, whoa.
This
okay.
is Junior and Eric. So
Sorry.
Junior's first.
This is so much worse. This is 5 times worse than we thought it would be. Everyone's screaming about Russia, but the reality is what we complain about in Russia is happening right here in the United States of America.
Can you pause that?
See what I'm saying? That's the narrative I'm talking about, that nobody knows which way to go. Trump's like trying to sell this like, Putin's not a bad guy. Like, let's just let him have Ukraine. You know what I mean? And then Junior's over here like, well, yeah, Russia is corrupt. And so is America. Like, it doesn't, they're not on the same page with the messaging.
Did he say the punishment was 5 times worse than they expected?
Well, just than they expected. I think that's just a number he threw out. Like, he's saying like they didn't expect to be banned specifically. On a different interview, I heard him talk about it more. Like, Eric and Junior did not expect to be banned from doing business in New York at all.
So you expected to be punished, and yet you're completely innocent? Is that what that's now?
Well,
if you're saying that it's 5 times worse than you thought it was going to be, then you thought you were going to lose.
Well, let me just say what I think he's talking about. This is just from all of like stuff I've seen him say on Rumble, just like my estimation of what Eric and Junior's point is that what may well be true too is like they have signed their name, which that's the problem. When you falsify, when you put your signature on business documents, it doesn't matter. You could say, like, they're trying to say though, like, everyone that testified said the same thing about us, right? Like, Junior and Eric are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Like, they largely didn't really know what was going on or have anything to do with this. They're just kind of like 2 patsies who signed their name on some documents. So I think like in their mind, they thought the judge would see like daddy's guilty, but like we're just 2 patsies. Like he made sign some documents. Like that's what I think is kind of their position. And I got the same vibe from Eric. Like Eric seems absolutely shocked that like he is involved in this.
I actually tend to agree with them. By the letter,
Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
Yeah, by the letter of the law, they are guilty. But do I think that it matters a goddamn what they think or do? Do I think they're allowed to make their own decisions? No, certainly
absolutely not. Yeah, they don't breathe without like their dad first instructing them to. If he didn't want them to sign those, if Trump didn't want them to sign those documents, probably to use them as a human shields. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do agree that like, there's one person who makes decisions and who is a control freak and has largely, you know, no one does anything in these organizations without Trump saying so.
Oh, Trump.
Without, exactly.
Real quick, Kim sent a donation sending love and appreciation to Jay and Felice. We are sending that love and appreciation back to you, Kim.
Much.
We love you too.
Okay, continuing on with Junior's complaining, tap the screen, guys.
And you got to remember that half of the judgment that you're talking about in the 364, half of that was already ruled inadmissible because of statute of limitations in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals has already ruled that, and this judge simply decided to ignore that because Listen, Janine, honestly, my thoughts are the best thing I ever did was get out of New York. New York is a hopeless place at this point. It's so...
Eric says the best. This is Eric now. Eric is less trying to make up lies. You know, Junior's the more intelligent one, as Michael Cohen always says. The smartest child is Junior. That's why his father is so mean to him, because he's threatened by Junior. And Eric is kind of just the one that like lays down and just cries. Like Eric said, the best thing I ever did was get out of New York. It's a hopeless place.
Do you remember? I looked this up on Friday, and my dumb brain can't remember. Do you remember what the appeals court ruling he's talking about? What they actually ruled? I now can't remember. I know we looked this up, but do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Okay,
but
I'll try and find it
it's
while you play
largely, it's not. He's mischaracterizing it, is what I can say.
Yeah, I just can't remember why. I'll look it up while we're going.
Like, there's no contradictory appeals court ruling to what this judge ruled. And, like, in the appeals courts, that largely had to do, right, like, with the gag order that they were debating. But, yeah, we can, yeah, I don't remember those specifically, so let's look it up and then... Okay, yeah, and we're continuing on with Eric crying.
This judge, the animosity, the way he looked at my father in the courthouse was horrible. I've never seen such hatred in anybody's eyes before.
This is, okay, I gotta say this, because I think it was Benny who was writing on my profile, and it was exactly what I thought. When I heard Eric say that, like, I've never seen such hatred. He's talking about the judge, saying he's never seen such hatred in someone's eyes before, and I think Benny wrote, like, except for my dad when he stares at me. Like, it's so funny because it just does. It's like, except for the way your dad looks at you, Eric. Like,
I don't know if you saw, like, that was the thing. That was on Friday, that was the Twitter thing, is that Engeron's evil. And they, over and over, they just played the clip of Engeron, like, smiling. He, like, smiles and shrugs. I don't even know what that's in reference to. Like, I think there's just a video of him where he smiles and shrugs, and they're like, look at this guy. He knows what he's doing. It's like, Jesus Christ, you guys, get it together.
Yeah. Sorry, I just lost here. Let's continue on.
My father built the skyline of New York City. And this is the thing
Yeah, that's also a complete lie.
Okay.
Like, there's no more offensively untrue thing than Donald Trump built any skyline of any New York City. Even if you look at names buildings his name used to be on, those are licensing deals. Like, this is not a person that's responsible for any New York skyline. But that is a line Trump specifically wants people to use. You know what I mean?
Him. New York doesn't exist without Donald Trump.
That's got to be the rhetoric. Yeah. Like, Trump was a slumlord from Queens. You know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting what Trump built the New York sky. Like, it doesn't make it make sense.
So Don and I, every single witness testified. We have nothing to do with this. They went in, witness after witness. This is not what they did in the company. It didn't matter, this guy. You know, we were trophies on a wall for this guy. You know, this is a state...
Like, that is, like, Eric's point. Eric's defense is, like, I had no idea what was going on. Well, then don't sign your name to business documents that are falsely inflating, like, the assets of this company.
I remember once a year, my dad, when I was a kid, I would have to sign something for the taxes saying that he paid me. It was like money that they put away for each of us kids. Like, my dad owning his own business, he was able to pay us a certain amount as a write-off, and then he would take that money and they put it. I remember signing that every day. But, like, that's what these kids are doing too. There's like, oh, dad, like, since the day they were born, they've been signing things that their dad tells them to sign. And that's what, like, I'm sorry, that sucks, Eric and Don Jr. Like, I do feel a little bit bad that your dad is a criminal. That does suck. It does suck that you're going to be in trouble for this. But, like, Daddy Trump could just take the heat for this and not implicate his children. That's the difference. Even Bernie Madoff had the sense to keep his children away from the illegal side of the business. It was on record that he wouldn't let them up to even, like, whatever level he worked on. There was a level that his own children were not allowed, despite working in the business and managing their own portfolios. Like, they weren't even allowed on that floor. Not Trump. Trump will absolutely send Eric, Don Jr., Ivanka, Tiffany, Barron. He'll send all of them to jail before he goes to jail.
Well, he definitely didn't keep them out of it, right? Like, yeah, it's basically using them as human shields. And at any point, he could have made a deal. He could have said, this was all me, but Trump has never fallen on his sword for himself, let alone another human.
In New York, I caution anybody even thinking about moving to New York to just be careful. This is not the state that my father grew up in. This is not the state that we grew up in. This is the demise of a politically weaponized system, and it's horribly sad, Janine. And I promise you, we're going to fight this, and we're going to win at the appellate division, because honestly, it's so egregious. It's so egregious, I promise you, we're going to get it overturned. Well, hey,
Do you promise,
Yeah,
Eric? You
he
should
promises.
stop making promises that you can't keep. That's like part of what your issue is. And here's an interesting thing I just want to point out also that everyone's going to find fascinating about Judge Jeanine. Do we know if Judge Jeanine was a real judge? But here's what I found out about box wine. Trump issued another pardon with less than an hour left of his presidency. Who do you think it was, you guys? Who do you think got pardoned with with an hour left in his presidency? Fox News star Janine Pirro's tax fraudster ex-husband Albert, who used to represent Donald, is given clemency with an hour. Is it all starting to come together here? Trump's member was doing pay for pardons, which we know.
Yeah, it's amazing how much fraud how corrupt Trump is. And because of January 6th and because of all these court cases, it hasn't even been a story. If any other president had pardoned the type of people that Trump did on his way out, there's been bad pardons. Obama had bad pardons, everybody had bad pardons. But the people that Trump pardoned on his way out, who were just obvious crooks, and some of them directly defrauded his voting base. Steve Bannon, looking at you. That would be a massive story, but it's story number 10,000 because it's Donald Trump and he's got a million others. Real quick, Michelle sent a donation and a beautiful message. Shout out to Mr. Kitty, delicate little prince, 17 years of ignoring mice and basking in the sun with your tail in the pool. Love you, buddy.
Well, yeah, Steve Bannon was pardoned, but Steve Bannon probably got a free pardon. We're talking about this is probably part of his pay for pardon scheme, which there's tons of information back. It's fascinating, all the people that Trump pardoned. And
I have multiple friends who work for the same company, a company that's based in Oklahoma. And somebody that worked at that company, their husband was one of the soldiers that Trump pardoned. I can't remember which one it was. But I can tell you that for some reason, they needed, and I saw the emails, they fundraised. And I think they collected somewhere around $300,000. They needed a fundraiser for somebody who was in jail, and they wanted Trump to pardon him. And they did a fundraiser, and they raised close to $300,000. And I think, if I remember correctly, the owner of the company was going to match all funds that were raised. So somehow they needed to raise $600,000 to get Trump's attention, and then that person was pardoned. So I don't know why else you would need to raise money to get somebody pardoned if you're not paying for a pardon.
Oh, yeah. And there's much more definitive, investigations on it. There were people through 2 billion himself, Jared Kushner, that were pardoned. There's articles all out there. Sometime we should probably do a research project and put together all the different people, because they're kind of investigated, by one reporter at a time. There's one story here, one story there. It's crazy.
Big Boat says that's smart. Big Boat, you think that fraud is smart. You guys all do that. That's the problem with MAGA. When Trump bragged about not paying taxes, you're like, he's smart. No, he's committing fraud, which is why he now owes all this money. You guys need to stop listening to dumb people. Stop listening to idiots. Fraud is not smart. You get in trouble for fraud. In fact, this company I'm talking about, if it was investigated, and this linked back to Trump, you then get to charge Trump for another crime. These are people who are getting Trump in trouble. I guess that's smart.
Well, he got caught, Big Bud. So is it smart that he got caught? Don't cry about the 460 some odd million that he owes, because he did a big fraud and got caught.
Law and order,
that's what's happening. Is he did
Law
a
and
fraud.
order, police. Law and order. They're the party of law and order.
Doesn't make any sense, but keep going with that argument. So next on our verdict derangement syndrome compilation situation, I made one for Alina Habba. Because, I was going to do Melania, but she's nowhere to be found and does not care about any of this. So I decided to just do the woman that Trump has speaking for him most often. Listen to, this is Melania. This is Alina. She really lost her mind.
How does the judge get away with being far more guilty of the very thing that they said Donald Trump was guilty of?
I think the biggest message I can give the American people tonight is that he's not going to get away with it. Letitia James is not going to get away with it. The Biden administration is not going to get away with it. There is a point, and I want to say something different than I normally do. We have the order now. I'm free to speak, and let me just say, as somebody who sat there in the trial, Sean, and I'm so happy you invited me on to say this, they will not get away with it. We will come at them. We will come hard, and we will literally.
We will come at them. We will come hard. None of this. Just notice up to this point.
We will be engorged.
She said not one thing.
Hard.
She said not one thing. Just in case anybody's keeping scores, if she said anything like real about this case, no, absolutely not.
Fight until the truth comes out.
What?
Remember that one time she's like, I'd rather be pretty than smart because I can fake being smart.
They were talking about that on, I can't remember what network, but they were saying like, I wonder if she wants to take that back now. And it's like, yeah, I mean.
She's bad at faking smart too. You're not that good at it, Alina.
There was nothing wrong. President Trump has done nothing wrong. All he has done
so much wrong
is won a campaign.
Fraud.
And that is scaring them because they know when he goes back in November 2024, he is going to clean house. And that is truly the problem. It's not about Mar-a-Lago's worth. It's not worth $18 million.
It's really important to also note that, again, she's saying that the problem is that Trump's going to become president and clean house. That's reference to him firing the civil service, the deep state. Those are federal employees. Again, this case has to do specifically with the state of New York, where Trump can fire and hire no one. So it's just also important to note she is talking about two completely different things that have nothing to do with each other. Up until this point, she has said not one real thing.
I can fix her though.
Yeah, and you can.
Yeah,
guys, let's tap the screen. Let's get to 160K.
It's worth probably $1.5 billion at the least. It is not.
Now she's saying Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is not worth 1.5 billion, but now she's saying it's worth 1.5 billion, which is hilarious.
Let's cover this once and for all. The reason Mar-a-Lago's value is low is for a couple of reasons.
It's in the airport parking lot.
Yeah, number one, if you go outside, nobody can fucking hear you. That's a problem.
That's what we've learned.
Number two, it is not zoned as a residential property. Only the living area is a residential property, right? So the rest of Mar-a-Lago is a social club, and social clubs don't operate at a heavy profit, right? So that because it's not zoned as a residential property, it's not worth that much. It must remain as a social club, and social clubs don't make a lot of money. So if you have an expensive piece of property that would be expensive for residential use, but you can't use it for residential use, it's not worth that much. It's entirely moronic. For, again, Alina Habba, it's worth 1.5 billion. You're not acting smart. You're acting stupid. It's not worth anywhere near $1.5 billion because it's a social club, and only the part where people actually live and reside is residential. That's why it's not worth that much. Can you guys stop being goddamn dumb for like one day and stop listening to morons like this? Think about it. Why is every part of her argument a lie? Why can't they get one fact right when they make these arguments? Because they don't have a real argument. They just have to rely on you guys continuing to be stupid, and you're doing a great goddamn job. Really, Big Boat, you're doing terrific. You're being exactly what they need.
That's the point. These people want to be lied to. I honestly no longer blame the Alina Habbas of the world, because it's like you want to be defrauded. You literally want to be lied to. You guys are sitting here. You could at any point fact check any of this. Not one word these people are saying it's true, and you're like eating it up, like lapping it up, like.
Worth Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street. That's not what this is about, Sean. You know it, and I know it. Miss James had her shoes off in court. Let's not.
Okay, now we're going to the real important argument that they're going to bring up in appeal. Alina Habba is most angry that Letitia James had her shoes off in court, which, just to go into it a little more and explain it before she goes off on this weird rant, what she's upset about, which is largely known, is that whoever let's say the AG is, doesn't try the case, right? Like, Fani Willis has a bunch of attorneys working for her. She's a DA. You know what I mean? Fani Willis isn't in court necessarily making the argument. Same with Jack Smith as a special prosecutor. There are lawyers underneath him, which are the trial lawyers. Same with Letitia James. She wasn't the one making the arguments in court, but many days she did attend court and just sit and observe. And Alina can't understand that fact.
Forget that. I called it out in the closing argument, but it's true.
Time out.
She had a Starbucks coffee.
Mr. I Can Pretend I'm Smart said that Letitia James had her shoes off as part of her closing argument. That has nothing to do with any case ever. That's not even relevant. She's not smart, guys. Like, this is not a good closing argument. Somebody in the audience who prosecuted this case has her shoes off. What are you saying there? And why are you repeating it like that was a good way to close your argument?
Yeah, some lawyer had their shoes off. Another lawyer didn't understand how to submit exhibits to evidence before they started reading
Someone
those
forgot
documents.
to get a jury.
I mean, so a lot of lawyers in this case were afflicted with different things. I'd rather have someone with those shoes on whose brain is operational. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, bring that up in the appeal, Alina. Bring it up in the appeal. Write that in your appeal to the appellate court. Just say that this should be overturned on appeal because Letitia James, for a period, had no shoes on. I'm sure that argument will go over well with the appeals court.
By the way, shout out Letitia James. You're welcome in the Discord. We have a very foot-friendly Discord. You're welcome.
I love her voice, too. Like, that press coverage she gave, I feel like she sounds like she could be like a voiceover for like a soap opera. Letitia James is like a force to be reckoned with. I love that woman.
James had her shoes off in court. Let's not forget that. I called it out in the closing argument, but it's true. She had a Starbucks coffee in her hand. She wasn't doing work.
Oh, no, not a Starbucks!
With her shoes off and a coffee. And at the end of the day, we're sitting there.
How dare a lawyer be drinking caffeine in court? It's like, this do you hear? This is who Donald Trump has in charge. You know what I mean? Like, give up. He can't even get people to help. But that's because all the good lawyers are gone. That's what you need to understand. MAGA, understand this about Michael Cohen. He's extremely intelligent. It has been all downhill as far as lawyers near Trump and the fixers. Now we're on Boris Epstein, a guy who can barely for Trump since Michael Cohen.
Boris is always just... if your name's Boris, you're a villain in an action movie. You're not a lawyer. You never hire anybody named Boris unless you need villain work. I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Exactly. Rather than paying attention to the case, she's just looking what kind of shoes people have on. Like, right there, she should probably been disqualified.
Looking at this going, this is the state of our country. AGs are so comfortable in court that they know that they don't even have to do the job. They don't have to do the work. They're going to let their people do it. They're going to sit there and they're going to win. That's a problem.
She's saying that's why she had no shoes on, because she's so comfortable.
Yeah, it's the argument that the case was so fucking solid and the defense was so bad that Letitia James felt comfortable enough to remove her shoes and drink a coffee. That's, again, not a good argument for you. If the fact that Letitia James is able to sit back and let everybody do the work and have her coffee and take her shoes off tells you that your case sucked. You didn't have a defense. It was so easy to beat that Letitia's not even worried. I do think it's fair to say that had Letitia James been really, really nervous about that ruling, she may not have been there with her shoes off and a coffee cup.
Well, it's also important to say that these were long. This is an 11-week trial, hours and hours and hours and hours in courtrooms. Like, these people were all in there probably getting comfortable. Like, this trial went much longer. Like, it started with a partial judgment, right? Like, Trump was guilty because this case is not built on people testifying to things. It was built on financial documents, a very specific laid out fraud in financial documents that the judge, because of Alina Habba, there was no jury in the case. She didn't check the box for a jury. So this judge was able to review these documents before the case started, and they were behind the 8 ball from the beginning. There was a partial judgment in the state's favor before the case started, before the 11 weeks even began.
Yeah, and so all Alina Habba needed to do is make sure that there's a partial ruling. So if there's a partial ruling on, you need to make sure you've got a jury that you can convince. Oh, wait, she forgot to get a jury. I remember now. She forgot to get a jury.
And I also think it's just important to remember that, like, every MAGA, you guys, Trump's new to you, right? 2016, he came down the escalator and you're like, who's this man? New Yorkers have had decades of being defrauded by Trump. Like, New York is very well aware of who Donald Trump is.
Up to the next level. We're going to go to people that aren't running on a campaign, running to get Trump before they're even in office, and we will win. We did nothing wrong. Those statements of financial condition, Sean, were undervalued. We did absolutely nothing wrong. Imagine you're dragging children.
What she's saying there, the statement of financial condition means after Trump falsified square footages and things on these documents, he had his lawyers put in a clause that said all of this might not be real.
Yeah.
Which doesn't matter. You still can't submit false information on financial and business documents.
I might be tricking you.
But that's what she's talking about. When she says the clause was undervalued, she's saying the statement where Trump says at the end, oh, by the way, all this information I provided might be a lie.
Yeah. By the way, Ted Cruz jumping on this train while we finish this. Ted Cruz has now taken Kathy Hochul came out and she said, this is an unusual circumstance that New York business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different than Donald Trump. And now the Republican line all day today will be Kathy Hochul said, we're only doing this to Trump. I want to be very clear. She said, this is an unusual circumstance that New York business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different than Donald Trump, meaning that they don't just commit fraud all the time, right? She's talking about all the businesses in New York, and Ted Cruz is now with the rest of Republicans out there saying, well, she said that it's only about Donald Trump. Just while you're being lied to, some more big boat while you're here. I know you're going to be lied about what that quote means later, and you'll forget that I said this, but I wanted to tell you first that it's really fucking stupid.
Tap the screen. We're almost 175.
This. That's the desperation we're at. Alan Weisselberg, Jeff McConney, people that did their jobs and did nothing wrong. And that is how desperate they are because they're going to lose. We have a person who literally cannot walk up the stairs without falling down. So what do you have to do? You have to lie, cheat, and steal. And now we have political lawfare. We will win.
Do you see how she's all over the place? Like, even her, like, she's getting worse. It's like none of those things. Alan Weisselberg and McConney absolutely did commit crimes. As a matter of fact, while the judgment of this case was coming out, Weisselberg is negotiating a perjury plea in another case, admitting that he lied. Like, absolutely, Alan Weisselberg did things wrong. Again, falsifying business documents, fraud is a crime. Like, and it is.
If your arguments are good enough to stand on their own merits, you don't have to lie. You don't have to use hyperbole. When she says Joe Biden literally can't walk upstairs, he does it every day. Every single day he walks upstairs. Like that this is now, like, now you're saying that the reason Goron made this ruling is because he's so afraid that Joe Biden, who can't walk upstairs, is going to lose to Donald Trump. Like, come on, guys. You're better than that. You're just better than that.
Yeah, make it make sense. Okay, so since we're going in reverse chronological order, we're kind of on Friday night now. So I have another clip of Alina. It's like Alina Habba. I mean, I have never seen someone on a press tour like that. Alina Habba gave like 10 interviews on Friday, long ones, and made no sense. Like, all we know, and that's the sad part from Alina Habba, is if there was a defense, it would have been given in court. But largely just having a person making no sense scream really fast and loud, like, how is that helping your case? I'd probably do less of Alina if I was was Trump. I mean, obviously he's like, his own bias is clouding his judgment, because Joe Tacopina was crazy, but is much better at his job. Do you know what I mean? Joe It would be much better for him to have Joe Tacopita on this case.
So I was researching a little bit today, and Alina Habba, I think what she has been assigned to do is share this narrative for fundraising. I found out today, and I somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. This is based on 20 minutes of my own research, but it appears that Donald Trump is not allowed to pay for any of these bills through money that he fundraises through his PAC or any of his political action committees or his own reelection fund. However, the rules on giving money to Donald Trump to pay his bills are a little bit more muddled when it comes to taking money from the RNC. The RNC has rules about what they will and will not give Trump, but now Trump suddenly has Lara Trump on the board, or wants to get Lara Trump there making those decisions. It looks an awful lot to me like a person who just was found guilty of fraud is now trying to defraud the Republican Party and get them to use their money in their coffers and give it directly to him to pay off his debts. Lara Trump said so. She said she will make sure that all the money goes only to one source, to Donald Trump. They're not going to spend on other elections, state elections, federal elections, no elections, just money going to Donald Trump. And it appears that he may be able to take money from the RNC to pay some of this off. But again, somebody's going to need to fact check me on that.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if he can, but like, for instance, what's that guy's name? Grant Cardone. It was like a big,
brilliant
Trump supporter. Another guy who's firing on no cylinders. Start immediately when this verdict came out, or by dusk, let's say, when this verdict's out, he started a $354 million GoFundMe, with which their new strategy is to get people to go through that GoFundMe for Trump's legal defense fund. I think I checked, I think it's up to like $320 something thousand. So like, essentially they're just paying down the interest that's like accruing. I don't know. It's not even funny. It's, by the way, idiotic.
Grant Cardone, another billionaire claiming to be a billionaire who's definitely not a billionaire and has made all of his money. Like, he's essentially running a Ponzi scheme himself. Like, he does coaching and then he gets people to invest in these real estate projects for him where he's first money in or no money in, but first money out. Grant Cardone's just another scammer. He's done it almost exactly like Donald Trump. Like, he's a real estate guy that mostly is just like a media guy. He wants to be in the public eye. He wants to be viewed as a massive success. He hides all of his failures. Again, he's a Scientologist, which is just beautiful to add to that. But he's just a wannabe Donald Trump, a modern day wannabe Donald Trump.
Okay, I think I have this clip. It's one of four, but so Nikki Haley, this is Friday night, and she's being asked about a series of things, all of which I'm enjoying this version of Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley should just say what she thinks more often. It's so much more authentic. But I believe the quote I'm trying to pull up, I believe she's being asked she was on Caitlin Collins' show on Friday night and is essentially being asked about Trump trying to use the RNC, what Jay was saying, as a legal defense fund.
Because we did have a New York judge handing Trump a massive blow. Anyone who knows him knows how this would affect him, because it's not just his wallet, it's also his business image, by ordering him to pay this penalty of north of $355 million with interest for engaging in years of fraud by inflating the values of his properties. How damning do you believe this ruling is?
I mean, my biggest issue is I don't want the RNC to become, his legal defense fund. I don't want the RNC to become his piggy bank for his personal court cases. We've already seen him spend $50 million worth of campaign contributions towards his personal court case.
$50 million, MAGA. He has spent $50 million of your hard-earned money on his court cases, not to get him elected so he can enact policies for you guys. Just for his court cases. He's robbing you. Like, that is the one thing I cannot stand. I feel like MAGA is being financially grifted day in and day out. It's never ending. How many people can be asking these people for money at once? Do you know what I mean? It's never ending.
Here's the part that I've wondered about these MAGA folks. If Donald Trump did the right thing and stepped away and said, hey, like, I'm not running for president while I'm under these indictments. Instead of making some conspiracy theory, we'd find out really quickly how serious these indictments are. Like, if this is a political thing, like, if this is all political retribution, then why not just say, like, okay, well, I'll step down until we have this figured out, right? It happens all the time. There's people who step down from campaigns because they're under investigation for something.
That's if they were reputable.
And they do what's best for the country and what's best for the party. Donald Trump doing this and choosing, like, he is choosing to hurt the party. But why? Because you guys have the checkbook. And you guys just have given him open access to the checkbook. Here you go. Here's all our money. We know you're a billionaire. You weren't going to take a salary. You were going to self-fund your own campaign. We didn't have to worry about your interests. Otherwise, by the way, pointing out again that while he was president, he was still negotiating a deal with the Russian government for Trump Tower Moscow. But who cares about that, right? Like, this is why he's still in the race. For all this persecution shit, like, no, he committed crimes and he's still in the race because he needs your money, which is why he declared he was going to run for re-election. Was it in 2021 or was it 2022 that I want to say it was the end of 2021 that he said, I'm running again. Do I have that date right?
Who, Trump?
Trump, yeah.
Yeah, I think 2020. The end of 2021, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's
so.
when it was. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother story, because right here I have this all highlighted up. This is the indictment of Alexander Smirnov, the liar. Like, that's a whole other, oh my God. That'll be a whole other thing for us to go through. Let's continue. This is, again, if you don't remember, it's Nikki Haley talking about Trump using the RNC as a legal defense fund.
Real quick, one more time. Sorry. Just a couple people asked what's coin caught. TikTok has been suppressing specifically POC accounts, and as an act of solidarity with those people with those accounts, we're participating in CoinCop, meaning we don't accept gifts through Twitter. If you want a gift, you can send to either that Venmo or that Cash App. That's split between Felice and I. You can also send a personal message, which we will gladly read. Thank you, Felice. Let's finally.
Yeah, someone do an F, Marry, Kill, like 3 politicians. We haven't done a fun. Those are really fun. Okay, so continuing on with Nikki Haley.
Worth of campaign contributions towards his personal court cases. Now we see him trying to get control of the RNC so that he can continue not to have to pay his own legal fees. The problem is that doesn't help us win any seats in the House, in the Senate, or anything else if the RNC is all focused on his legal fees. The RNC is practically broke now as it is. And so this is a bigger issue for the Republican Party. It's not, I'll let him deal with his lawsuits. I haven't paid attention to what the charges are, what he's found. But what I am most concerned about is now he's gone and taken someone from North Carolina. He's made the co-chair his daughter-in-law. He's made his campaign manager the director of operations. He's trying to control the RNC after the fact that he tried to get me out of the race so that he could be the presumptive nominee. All of that is so that he has an arm to pay his legal fees. That's the fear that every Republican should have, because we won't win anything if he goes down that path.
And you guys, please do, like, what the Republican Party is so good at, what the RNC has been so successful at, and it's just crushed the Democratic Party at, is recognizing the importance of smaller elections and funding them, from school board elections to state legislatures. Look at how important what we've seen now. Like, there's not a lot of, the federal government has essentially been at a standstill, right? Nothing has happened in the 118th Congress. Very few things, other than censuring people, things of the, for pulling fire alarms or whatever. Nothing has happened. But what we've seen day in and day out on the local state legislature level is that laws are going in place where there's these Republican supermajorities. That is because the RNC and the Republican think tanks had the foresight to understand that they needed to funnel money to local elections, to focus on controlling state legislatures. And that was where local laws would be made. And that was where they can move the needle, right? It's not just important to have a Republican president. Like, that's a top-down strategy. You also, what the Democrats completely have failed at, is having a bottom-up strategy. You want two strategies going on so that you meet in the middle. The Democrats now we're focusing on local elections. Now we see what can happen to the LGBT community, minority communities when we ignore local elections.
Well, look,
but the fact that
what about
Trump's now saying-
gerrymandering? You guys wouldn't exist. You wouldn't have control of the House. You wouldn't have had President Trump. You wouldn't have had President Bush if you weren't allowed to gerrymander. This stuff's all done locally. So it's great. This is great news for us. I hope that Donald Trump bleeds you guys dry. This is terrific news for us.
And so apparently, and if you listen to, we'll get into it, but if you listen to Lara Trump talk, like the sole focus of the RNC will be getting Donald Trump elected. Everything else is secondary to that. And a huge part of that no one can deny is the legal fees. And we've seen people say over and over, if Donald Trump is convicted of felonies, I'm not voting for him. So paying these legal fees or paying for his defense is part of getting Trump elected, even though I don't believe it's going to work, because that's what we've seen. The people who are on board for Haley have said they're not on board for Trump. The exit polls of the primaries are showing that those voters, the people in the middle who are supporting Haley now, will move left if it's between Dark B and Donald Trump.
Brett has sent in an F. Mary Unalive, the engorgement edition, which is beautiful.
Engorgement edition.
Making her daily appearance. Lauren Boebert.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Nancy Mace and Alina Habba.
Okay, well, unalive Alina Habba, because I can't even listen to it. Nancy Mace used to be a different person. Like, she's not who she's pretending to be now. I actually don't know. I was looking, you can look up just as soon as 2022, Nancy Mace was elected on a completely different platform. She used to be very, in the middle about abortion. I'd probably have to marry Nancy Mace and have sexual contact with Lauren Boebert. I don't know. I can't decide. What do you think? That's a hard one. They're kind of the same. They both got Matt Gaetz. They both.
Here's how I look at it. I look at it as Boebert and Mace, kind of to me are the same. I think Mace is a lot smarter, but either one of them, they're just going to do and say what they're told. So that leaves me with the F and Mary options between those two. Habba, obviously, unalive. But I'm going to take my time because I want her to keep representing Donald Trump as long as humanly possible. It's going really well. So I'm going to... Look, I think marrying Boebert would be scary. I think there's a real chance she blows any savings that you have. I think she probably has a credit card problems more so than Mace. So I'm going to marry Mace, and I'm going to have just a Beetlejuice night with Boebert.
Okay. So this is a good thing. This is about, we were just talking about this. Do you think that if Alina Habba could go back in time, that she would say again that it's better to be pretty than smart? Okay. So this is Michael Cohen answering that question, essentially.
What does he do? Well, tell me this, though, before I answer that question. Do you think that if Alina Habba could go back in time, that she would say again, it's better to be pretty than smart? I mean, we're talking about civil judgments now in excess of $500 million. What is Donald going to do? Well, has Donald been able to bond out the $83.3 million second verdict on the E. Jean Carroll case? And I think the answer to that is no. How is he going to then bond out 350, 400, 450, whatever the number may actually turn out to be? And we'll probably get that relatively soon once we figure out whether it's 1 year on the statutory interest or it goes back to 6 years. Big difference, of course. But this is really big money. He doesn't have it. The assets are going to end up being liquidated, and the balance after the mortgages and taxes will be used in order to offset the judgments. And don't think for a second that Tish James is just going to accept the properties that are here in New York in order to liquidate them. Once you have a judgment, what you can do if in fact that the debtor does not have assets in the state or doesn't have assets that can cover the judgment amount, what you do is you then domesticate that judgment in other locales, whether it's national or even international. I've seen people do that. I've seen them successful in domestic.
What we're learning is Donald Trump's in a lot of trouble. It's not just unique. It's not about liquidating just the assets that he has in New York City as it relates to the business. Michael Cohen's explaining, like, when you have a judgment against you, how a debtor can, like, their assets, it can move outside of the state and also internationally to liquidate assets.
He did a great job explaining how much trouble there was. Two things. Number one, I just was sent this. The person who spent $9,000 on Donald Trump's shoes. Do you want to guess who they were?
A Russian CEO.
Russian CEO that
It's in the outline somewhere, I think.
Oh, it is? Okay, I didn't see it. Former VP at Deutsche Bank. Shocker there.
Yes.
And then this is from John. This is a question specifically for me. FMK, nylon carpet, wool carpet, polyester carpet.
Wool. Ugh. Wool
but wool's got to go because that's going to hurt.
That's got to hurt.
Yeah.
Wool carpet? Is wool carpet
what lasts longer, nylon or polyester?
Nylon carpet? I don't know.
I don't know. John, look, I've got to do some research because I've got to find out whether nylon or polyester lasts
they
longer.
both sound like a fire hazard. I agree.
I'm gonna marry the one that lasts longer. So whichever one I figure out lasts longer, and then whichever one doesn't last longer, they're gonna have the night of their life. Well, like a couple minutes of their life.
Okay, and Michael Cohen. Let's continue.
Foreign assets. Let's not forget, he has properties, 3 of them overseas, 2 in Ireland and 1 in Scotland. They'll domesticate all of these verdicts, this judgment, and they will get warrants within which to again seize those assets as well. This is as close to a death spiral to a company as you could possibly have.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Well said. Michael's never been happier to be off that ship. You know what I mean? Like, his year in jail's never looked so good.
and Sue sent a message and agrees. Trumpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Trumpty Dumpty had a great fall. Judgments and legal fees broke this sad man. This time next year, he'll be trying not to drop the soap. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, so that brings us, let's go to Saturday's Trump rally, which, like I said, is like one of the longest Trump rallies. There's been more speakers at other Trump rallies, but I think like Trump was on stage. He had a lot to ramble on about. Like, let's see how many of these quotes I want to play. Let's see.
As you're pulling that up, Amber has said for nylon and polyester will melt. Go for cotton.
That's what fire. It seems like they would go up with like flames.
I didn't know what you meant by fire hazard. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant, like flammable.
I want to say that I appreciate both you and everybody else who believes in me enough that I could cause enough friction to light a fire. I appreciate that. That's high praise. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta play this first quote. This is, first of all, Trump starts, it's just funny. Just listen to this. Oh my God. I don't think he hears like the way stuff sounds when he starts saying it, you know? It's like we're all listening to like an inside joke and he's just not getting it.
Whale. They called me a whale. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if
he's saying they called me a whale. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Who called him a whale?
Well, he's not, just listen to the clip.
Whale. They called me a whale. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if they meant a whale from the standpoint of being a little heavy or a whale because I got a lot of money. But I think they meant the second. But he's a whale of a client. We love him. He's a whale of a client, one of the strongest personal balance sheets that they've ever seen. And he was actually very overqualified for the loan. I didn't even need this loan.
It's just funny because he's calling himself a whale. And he's talking about Deutsche Bank. Like, he's talking about, like, the fact he did nothing wrong in the case.
Why did he take a loan he didn't need?
Well, I don't mean...
Just out of curiosity, why did Deutsche Bank give him a loan that he didn't need? That's a weird thing to brag about Donald Trump. It's
he's just saying he's strong financially. I think it's just funny to listen to him call himself a whale. But here's okay, and then so he kind of segues into now, right off the bat, just rambling on about this fraud. Listen.
They had a lot of cash because we built a great company. Country. The case is a complete and total sham. It's a sham case. There were no victims, no defaults, no damages, no complaints, no nothing. There was nothing. The actual bankers who were involved in the loan transactions that were talked about testified at the trial. They said that Donald Trump was a highly sought after whale. They called me a whale. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if they meant a whale from the standpoint of being a little heavy or a whale because I got a lot of money. But I think they meant the second. But he's a whale of a client. We love him. He's a whale of a client, one of the strongest personal balance sheets that they've ever seen. And he was actually very overqualified for the loan. I didn't even need this loan. Those banks earned more than $100 million in profits doing business with me and my companies. They were very happy, and they testified that way. The expert witness, one of the most respected anywhere in the country, anywhere in the...
That's the New York, he's now talking about the New York accounting professor that he pays, he's already paid like over $500,000 to be a witness in his financial crimes.
Right, and it's true that they made over $100 million from him, but the findings also found that Deutsche Bank was defrauded out of $100 million in interest income because of these disclosures. Like, based on the disclosures he had, they would have changed the terms of his loan agreements. And based on the information they've been given, they're saying Deutsche Bank was defrauded out of more than $100 million. So again, like, it's the Donald Trump way. He thinks if he pays some people something and not exactly what he owes or what he should pay, then it's fine. It's their fault. He is consistently blaming victims every single time. It's the victim's fault that they allowed me to defraud them.
United States said that my financial statements were the best that he's ever seen. That's not bad. The best that he's ever seen. This was a case of satisfied banks and insurance companies which made a lot of money dealing with me, and a lot of very happy money and good money. Great financial statements, the best, really great financial statements that didn't even include the most valuable.
It's just important to note, none of that makes any sense. None of this has to do with real testimony in the case. What is the best financial statement anyone's ever seen? Like, none of that. This is just him rambling.
It's just a weird, what a weird. Every time somebody says that, you know that Donald Trump paid them to say that.
Berserker. Yeah, exactly. Happy money, the best money, the greatest money.
Asset, the Trump brand, ironclad disclaimer. Do you know what a disclaimer is?
This is what
an ironclad disclaimer.
So this is when he started, like what I was saying, the disclaimer. He's saying even though he lied on all these documents, he had a disclaimer that said maybe he was lying.
Yeah, it turns out, though, if you use an ironclad disclaimer and then the courts rule that you committed fraud, then your disclaimer was not indeed ironclad. In fact, it was pretty fucking useless. All it did was allow you to defraud the banks, but when it came down to, is this legal, turns out it wasn't. I wouldn't call something that has been ruled illegal ironclad. That's a bizarre statement to make.
Fraud is, in fact, always illegal.
That's like buyer beware. It means do your own due diligence. Don't believe what you're reading. It's all good, but don't even believe it. Go out and do your own due diligence. You have to do that.
Do you hear, MAGA, what Trump's saying to you? He's saying, like, I gave the banks all this information, but I also had a disclaimer that said, don't believe any of the information I'm giving you. This is what Donald Trump is saying. He's saying, I lied through my teeth to this bank, but they should have anticipated that and known I was a liar. It's the same thing with you all.
If you are using your, let's say I'm going to the bank and I'm going to get a loan, and I provide financial documents to the bank for the loan, right? And then the bank accepts my financial documents, but you say, like, you have to do your due diligence. Well, if I said I owned my neighbor's house and I'm using that as collateral to get a second mortgage, or let's just say I owned my neighbor's house, but I said it's worth, let's make it analogous. I own the house next door to me. It's worth $500,000. I say it's worth $1 million. I now get my loan for my second mortgage on my house using that as collateral. And they believed the assessment that I had either fraudulently got or I had fraudulently made. right? They bought, like, I still committed fraud. It does not matter that the bank believed me. It doesn't. Like, I still committed fraud there. If the bank finds out about it later, I don't get to use that. Like, this ironclad defense that he's talking about is him putting in wording that isn't ironclad. But that's what he's telling you, MAGA. He says if he defrauds you and you accept it, then it's your fault. It's not his fault. He just came up with
It's not his fault. He's defrauding other businesses. It's the idiots who believe him. Do you see what we're saying here? You're the idiots that believe him. He is telling you, he is literally telling you what the grift is. That he believes if I'm defrauding people and those people accept that I'm defrauding them, then they're the idiots and it's their fault.
Okay, this one's for you, FMK, Putin, Trump, Tucker Carlson.
You have to do it too.
I just said it was for you.
Putin. Well, I mean, why don't you have to do it?
I don't know. I tried to get out of it, and you called me out on it, and now I have to do it. Okay. Well, listen, I'm marrying...
Oh, my God.
Putin's got to go. Yeah, Putin's obviously...
No,
Putin's
wait, hold on. I don't know about that. I'm not... Wait. Tucker Carlson.
I got a good answer. All right, here we go. You can wait. Putin's got to go. I'm marrying Donald Trump with a prenup, meaning I will not be obligated to any... Yeah, because, look, he doesn't have that many years left. And Tucker Carlson's going to get it, and I'm going to tell everybody about it. All the anti-LGBTQ stuff he did, I'm going to talk about it every day the rest of my life. And I'm going to turn Tucker's audience against him. I'm going to convince his audience that he was closeted the whole time. That's my plan. That's not bad.
I think, like, that would be similar to mine.
Is that your
like,
cat?
Yeah, my cat's just meowing outside the door.
It's so bad.
I think that mine would be a similar answer. Like, just because, yeah, like, you don't have to probably be married that long with Tucker. It'd probably be much longer because he's younger. So, yeah, I think that's fair. And, like, with Putin, you can't worry every day, like, every time you need a drink of water if you're going to be unalived. You know what I mean? Like, you can't eat. You got to have one of those food tasters, you know, like they had during, like, you know, the 16th century when, like, kings and queens had to have some, like, little peasant child, like, take a bite of their food first so they knew that, like, if it was poisoned. That's, like, yeah, you can't watch your back, like, to that level every single day.
You gotta have a one-story house. Good point there. If you're standing,
yeah, just get pushed out of a window at any time. Like, it's no way to live. It's no way to live. Just wondering when you're gonna die.
Did you see Jay in the chat? Mr. Mitten's doorside jamboree.
He's just, this is what happens when you, like, indulge an animal's every whim. Like, he's just not used to being apart from me. Okay, so moving along, this is just...
The judge, one of the least respected in New York State, said that Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, now you don't really know too much about it, but it's very valuable real estate, let me put it that way, was worth $18 million in order to try to make his case. By doing that, he put the values way down. He tried to make his case when in actuality it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. And the appraisers say that. That's not me saying it. The biggest
the appraisers do not say that.
That's literally only you. Can we pause it?
Unconstitutional gag order. That's going to be great. The this judge, he gagged. He doesn't want me to talk. You're not allowed to talk. Because when you hear me talk, you'll say, oh, wow, this is a corrupt system.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Nothing. You literally make 0 sense and just tell a bunch of lies.
It's not because your followers then commit heinous or threaten heinous acts of violence about anybody that you talk bad about. It's not that. It's because you're too convincing. Second of all, if your property Mar-a-Lago is worth 50 to 100 times its current value, what do you think your taxes would be on that in Florida? What do you think your insurance would be on that? By the way, no, there's not a single person who has valued that property as it is at 50 to 100 times. Everybody who is actually valuing that property, I think it's been as high as 34 million. That number might be off, give or take a few million, but like between 18 and 34 million. The 18 million was a number that Trump had himself agreed upon for I believe it was taxes. I think it was for property taxes.
Yeah, because he wants his properties to be worth nothing when the tax man comes around.
And I think
when he wants a loan, a favorable loan, all of a sudden the same property is worth $1 billion. Like, make it make sense. Yeah,
right.
that number, that is a lie. That number, the 18 million, did not come from Engerin. That was an agreed upon number.
From, I think, 2016. And so it was based on a number that Trump had already agreed upon. And it may be 2015, but maybe it's late. Whenever these charges stem from, like, that was the year that the charges that they're deciding the damages on, from that year on. And so the valuation of Mar-a-Lago at that point was just part of his total portfolio of what is the total worth of your portfolio. One of them was Mar-a-Lago, and it was from whatever year that was. I can't remember what it was. 2015, 16, 14, 13, whatever. That was the year that it was valued at. So they take that starting value, and then you're going to decide, based on the evidence, how much of these loans did these loans help you increase your net worth or your money. And we have to pick the starting point of 2015 or 2016. That's where that number comes from. At no point was anybody saying that Mar-a-Lago right now is worth 18 million. In fact, nobody was even trying to make a statement of what Mar-a-Lago is worth right now. And maybe Mar-a-Lago is worth a lot more than 18 million because Donald Trump resided there, and maybe somebody would pay an absorbent amount of money to buy Mar-a-Lago knowing that Donald Trump once lived there. It's possible, but it doesn't matter because that was never in this discussion. It was about how much it was worth that day, and they used, I believe, Donald Trump's property taxes to get that number. So that was him devaluing it to 18 million. If that's too low of a number, that was on him. He devalued it.
So again, the 18 million was a number Trump gave on financial documents, never a number that Judge Engerin made up. Like, everything Donald Trump has said about this case has been a lie. But do you think that anybody's going to fact check or care? No.
Wesley sent a donation for coffee.
We'll win a third time. And the second time we did better than we did the first.
Yeah, so in case you caught that, that's just, again, him claiming he won the 2020 election that he did not win. Right after lying about the judgment against him, making not one true statement about that, then we go back into election fraud.
If you lose, Felice, let's choose volleyball because I can't. Volleyball is scored to 30, right?
Well, not anymore.
What's it scored to? All right, 25. So let's say that you win the first game. Is there like a cutoff? Is there a mercy rule? Or no? There's no mercy. All right, we're going to have to use baseball then. When I was in Little League, I thought there was a mercy rule in volleyball. When I was in Little League, I remember I was on the worst Little League team ever assembled. And we were so bad that we were playing the best team one time, and my position was to stand out behind the home run fence and catch home runs. If I caught them, the umpire would call it an out. And if I tracked it down and threw it back in, we just pretended there was no home run wall because we were that bad. But there was a mercy rule at 10. So let's say the first game we get mercy ruled by 10, and then the second game we lose 12 to 20. Did we really do better? No, they put up 20 runs on that time. Donald Trump saying he did better in the 2020 election is ridiculous because the other guy got more votes. That's how you judge things. All the people that voted, who voted for you? And him saying repeatedly, I did better in 2020 is just, again, making a mockery out of you guys. Stop letting him say dumb things and cheering for it. Why were people cheering right there? Why did people cheer at that? We did better in 2020. No, you fucking didn't. That's why you're not in office, because you did worse. You did worse.
It's just living in a delusional, dumbed down, alternate reality. Doesn't make any of it true.
How about the one 2 weeks ago? A woman, I'm saying, who the hell is she? Who is the woman? It's so unfair what's happening in our country. Our court system is a mess. What's happening in our country, they have to straighten it out.
So first he's complaining about the Judge Engerin verdict, which is just a case of financial fraud. He signed business documents and committed a giant fraud to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Then he's back on election fraud, which is a complete lie. Now he's back to denying he's ever met E. Jean Carroll, even though they're like, weren't they photographed together? Like the lie, the blatant lies never end.
Yeah. But he knows her husband, says he's a good guy, but doesn't know E. Jean Carroll. Got it.
As a result of this decision, businesses are going to flee New York State. They already are, taking with them tens of thousands of jobs because they can't subject themselves to this. And if this persecution of political opponents continues, no one will want to do business in the United States of America any longer. We will truly become a third world country. We are already in many ways, if you look at our border, we are worse than a third world country because there's never, ever
Why didn't he let anyone fix the border?
Well, I have a question about that. Generally speaking, when people are fleeing other countries, do they flee to third world countries, Felice? Do you see third world countries having their border overrun by people coming there seeking for jobs? Does that happen a lot in third world countries? In fact, could we think of one example of that ever happening?
I mean, it can happen, but generally, you don't go from a place where you're unsafe to a place where you're just going to be equally unsafe, right? Like, that's the joy of upward mobility. You show up the place where you think you have the best chance at creating a life. So, whatever. And he would love if other businesses in solidarity would leave New York City. New York City is the financial capital of the world, unfortunately for Donald Trump. Nobody cares. Donald Trump decided to do a fraud, just like Bernie Madoff decided to do a fraud to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. This has nothing to do with other businesses. Trump, if you don't want to be banned from doing business, don't do hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud and get caught.
Listen, that's really good advice. I think he ought to listen to that advice. I'd also like to point out that the number one employer, I would doubt that the number one employer of jobs is people who own, like, real estate developers. I bet they aren't anywhere near the top, what am I trying to say? Like, employers in New York. Would you?
Well, Eric Trump, I didn't play the very end of it, the Eric Trump clips, but Eric Trump claimed that, they were the most successful real estate firm in the United States. What? We say what now?
Yeah, they're so successful that a couple decades ago, maybe less than a couple decades ago, they stopped developing real estate and instead focused exclusively on licensing agreements because nobody would give them loans for actual real estate anymore because they had defrauded so many people and left so many people hanging, not paid. They had lost so many lawsuits that nobody would allow them to develop real estate anymore. So they just started doing licensing deals. Yeah, okay, that's the most successful real estate company in the country is not a real estate company that had to stop developing real estate because they couldn't develop real estate. I mean, MAGA
doesn't even know that. They don't even understand that Trump's business is about licensing. You have to have a pretty good reputation to do commercial real estate because of what Jay's saying. Other contractors in the same industry have to want to do business with you. And when you have a reputation for not paying your bills, nobody will do business with you any longer. That's why Trump had to pivot to licensing deals, because he can't build anything because he won't pay anyone.
He bankrupted 2 casinos, which are basically ways to print
Cash
money.
cows.
But while just so you know, while he bankrupted those casinos, and he was not, it's been shown that financially he was not responsible. It's been shown that he siphoned money out of those casinos before he declared bankruptcy. And then when the banks came to him, he basically did exactly what he's trying to do right now. And it worked. And this is why he thinks it works. Donald Trump went to the banks and he said, listen, I know what I did and you know what I did. And you guys signed on and you agreed to that. So look, you can help me get out of this mess, or I'm going to smear you in the press. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that what you guys did was fraudulent as well. And he actually at one point was on the payroll from the bank. They were giving him a monthly allotment so he could go out and be the face of the stuff that was happening in Atlantic City and try and spin it so that the bank and himself didn't look like they fucked everybody over, because they let Donald Trump run that business as a scam. They let him do it, and he held their feet to the fire. The problem is here, he doesn't have a bank on the other side that he can blackmail into going along with this. In this scenario, it's the state. And the state doesn't give a shit what the bank says. Because like we pointed out earlier, if the bank accepted fraudulent documents, well, that sucks for the bank, but it's still fraud by Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. The bank's not running cover for him. He tried. He's trying. That's his defense. He's trying to get the bank to run cover for him. Oh, we paid back all these loans. Oh, he was he was incredible. Doesn't fucking matter. But he's done this before, and this is why banks won't work with him. Because as soon as he makes all the mistakes, he tries to loop in the banks and he tries to get them all together. He's like, hey, if I go down, we're all going down. Which is exactly what would have happened had Letitia James not stepped in here.
Okay.
Won twice. And now we're going to win a third time. And the second time, we did better than we did the first. How about the one 2 weeks ago? A woman, I'm saying, who the hell is she?
Sorry. This is where we're at. Oopsies.
As a result of this decision, businesses are going to flee New York State. They already are.
I'm sorry. I really do know where I'm at, I promise.
Did I cut you off on that one, though? Is that where I cut you off?
No, I played I think I just have 2 copies of the same. I've lost my place.
South Carolina coming up, Michigan coming up, and then Super Tuesday coming up in 2 weeks. And they want me so badly, these guys, because you know what? We're beating Biden we're clobbering this guy. Who the hell we're beating him? Prosecutor deranged Jack
Can you pause
Smith
that?
is in a very big hurry.
I just want to point out to these polls, it is true that in a lot of recent polls, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden. The ones I've noticed, as I went through them this morning, where he has like a substantial outside of the margin of error lead, I looked today. Cornel West is an option. RFK is an option. I'm trying to remember who the other person that was an option. There was one other person who was an option. Cenk was an option. These polls are specifically going out and asking people who they prefer with all the candidates, people who aren't even going to be on ballots. And they're asking right now, who is your preference? If you take, do you think the people who don't vote for Cornel West are going to vote for Donald Trump? Probably not. That was 6%. RFK, do you really think RFK is going to get 15% of the vote? Or are these 15% of the people, a great deal of them, come election day, not going to want to waste their vote? Donald Trump should tell the truth about these polls. He's not. But I'm telling you, when you see these polls with Donald Trump winning, there's a reason when he has a big margin, and it's because they're including other candidates in that margin.
We're beating him. Prosecutor deranged Jack Smith is in a very big hurry. I mean, this guy is working so hard. He's a crooked guy. Deranged Jack Smith. He's a prosecutor. They brought him out to try and do damage. And he's done a lot of damage to a lot of people, and he's been overturned by the United States Supreme Court unanimously. But he always fails because he goes too far. He's an animal.
It doesn't.
Yeah, he is. He's a fucking animal. I agree with that.
He's doing his job very well.
Congress ought to impeach crooked Joe Biden for attacking his political opponent by weaponizing the DOJ, FBI, and even local DAs and attorney generals against his opponent, me. They ought to do that.
Oh, you? Oh, okay.
So now we're back to calling for an impeachment, which that's what this 37-page indictment is about, is every fact right? The 2020 1020, the 1023, the FBI informant that they based any business they had having any impeachment inquiry off has now been proven false. I invite everyone to read this indictment and to,
I love
if you
that
want
you
to
have that.
if you want to understand that Joe Biden they have no evidence. The few pieces of evidence that they said gave them a right to publicly investigate the president of the United States has now been proven false. It's all a lie.
Whoopsies!
So now he's back on Saturday night, right? Because this is all he has left. This man is a criminal, and his only strategy is to make other people look like criminals in hopes of saying, well, if it's two criminals, I guess it doesn't matter that Donald Trump's a criminal.
Yeah.
That's the strategy
that's
we're
the
at.
idea. Yeah.
He's trying to desensitize people to his criminality.
Don't let people get away with that when you have that discussion. Don't let people get away with that whataboutism. Like, no, we all should know the details of the Joe Biden case. We should all know that the story that they're relying on for Joe Biden being a criminal is based on a person now who we know for sure was lying, and that person is likely going to go to jail. And the other person that they're still relying on, there's two. There was that guy, and then Bobolinsky. And now Bobolinsky, turns out, big Trump guy, Trump donor, been caught lying multiple times. Their entire case now hinges on an obvious, paid Republican donor who doesn't seem to have any real connection to any of these stories at all, and a known now going to be prosecuted liar. Just point that out to them every time. When you talk about Trump's 91 indictments, 3 judgments against him now civilly, he's getting dusted at every turn. These aren't the same. They're not even close to the same. And they're so far apart that one is a crime and one of them is every time they turn around, Joe Biden looks better and better, cleaner and cleaner. None of this dirt is sticking. This isn't a case of, Joe Biden's guilty, but we don't have the evidence from it. It's like every time the evidence comes out, it's like, holy shit, he went out of his way to make sure he didn't commit a crime.
Well, and you guys can look this up as well, but Tony Bobolinsky was ran over in his deposition. He gave a deposition last week, and the facts did not hold up under cross-examination, right? But they won't release the transcript. And Dan Goldman, they've all suggested just release the transcript. Release the transcript, James Comer, and see if Tony Bobolinsky holds up. But that's why they don't want to have public hearings anymore, right? And Comer has been demoted, just so you know. They are hauling Robert Hur in next month. Robert Hur, the guy that wrote this random inflammatory report about Biden, they are hauling him in, but they gave it to the Judiciary Committee. They're not letting James Comer be in charge of it because he has failed at every point. But he's failing because there is no evidence. There's nothing here. His job is to make it look like a crime happened that didn't happen. And again, read the Alexander Smirnov indictment.
Real quick.
Every point that he had to stand on has now been debunked.
Bobolinsky's transcript is now available, though. We do have it now. It came out, a House Oversight published it on the 16th, which was, Friday?
Yeah, right? It's the 19th.
I'll drop the link to you. I didn't actually know that. I don't know how that wasn't bigger news, but I'm looking at it right now. I guess I've got reading to do.
They don't want to make it bigger news because they don't want anyone to read it. James Comer wanted to just say, he went on Hannity the day of Bobolinsky's testimony, and he said that they were bullying Bobolinsky. Aww. And Moskowitz went on TV and said, release the transcript. No one's bullying anyone. His facts the math's not mathing. His timeline doesn't make any sense. All we did was poke holes in the facts that aren't there.
That's rude, though, Felice. It's not nice to do that. I think they were correct there. Let me make sure I have all the comments covered. I don't remember if I said this or not. Wesley sent a donation and said, for a cup of coffee. Thank you, Wesley.
I'm just thinking of which clip I'm on. Sorry.
We had the strongest border. We had the strongest border in the
this is
recorded
good.
history of our country, by far. We had it down to a level that they'd never seen before. We built 571 miles of wall. We had it down. We were going to build another 200. It was all done. Then the election was rigged, and we couldn't put it up.
Then the election was rigged. Again, like every word this man says is a lie.
Isn't the number like 13 miles of wall that they actually constructed? It's under 20. It's in the teens. 500, Donald? A wall? Okay.
He just said 570 miles he constructed himself. And he was about to set up an additional 200 plus miles of wall, but then the election was rigged.
By the way, before we get to this, we are accepting guest requests from opposition. If you're opposition and you're here, at any point, just interrupt us. It's fine. You can interrupt us at any point. Even if you want to change the subject, that's fine.
Guys, tap the screen. Let's get to 250K. So again, listen to the numbers. The math, it's not mathing.
Had the strongest border. We had the strongest border in the recorded history of our country, by far. We had it down to a level that they'd never seen before. We built 571 miles of wall. We had it down. We were going to build another 200. It was all done. Then the election was rigged, and we couldn't put it up. We had 3 weeks. It was all there. And all they had to do is put up the slats, put them up.
It's supposed to be 2 weeks. He just needed 2 weeks. Did you hear him? They were going to put up the slats.
It was covered.
There. And all they had to do is put up the slats, put them up. It was all done. 200 miles. Actually built 300.
Tell me, are walls all done if they're not standing upright?
I'm having a hard time because he said they built 500. Now he's saying 200, but it was almost 300. What, like
571 miles of wall plus 200 some odd. He wasn't specific. That was about to be put up, but then the election was rigged. And then there was some other part of the wall apparently that just the slats needed to go up.
Yeah, just slat guys. Just needed the slat guys there.
Just if only the slat guys had time. You know, it
was more than I said we were going to do. All they had to do is put it up.
All they had to do was put up the wall.
Engorge the wall.
All they had to do was put up that wall. If only. It like MAGA loves you guys. It's not. There's no excuse anymore. You guys enjoy being lied to. We all know there was no 571 miles of wall plus 200 plus just a few slats that just needed to be stood up. But then election fraud. And they're just like, oh, that makes perfect sense to me. That makes perfect sense.
Well, listen to them cheer. Like you nailed it. They love being lied to. They demand. It's weird. The problem is when if Trump were to tell the truth, it's like none of it is very fun. None of it is outlandish. None of it is attention grabbing. So he has to lie. He has no choice but to lie in order to be interesting.
It's unreal. We are in uncharted.
Barack Hussein, remember Rush?
Oh yeah.
He used to shout Barack Hussein Obama. And I'll say, because a lot of people think he's still the president. A lot of people think he's really running Biden. He's got a lot of his people in there. So I'll say, you're President Barack Hussein Obama. And they'll say the next day, Donald Trump didn't know who the president of our country is. He thought it was Barack. It's true.
No, that's not true. That's not what we're talking about. But that was a nice try. Way to mix in some bigotry, still being a bigot with your explanation for constantly not knowing who the president of the United States was. Yeah. That was a nice try how you did all that together.
They said he doesn't know. Of course I know. Well, you didn't, though, at the time. At the time, you said it was Obama. That's the problem here, Mr. Trump, is that you are spending all of your time criticizing the mind of Joe Biden and the missteps of Joe Biden with his language, and you yourself can't correctly identify who different humans that you work with are.
If anyone's trying to keep up with where we are on the outline, that was 65. Just because I know I'm kind of all over.
Garage with the Corvette, right? The Corvette. And the documents under the Corvette. And he's, the Corvette sitting on classified documents. And it's okay for him, but for me, when you have it sealed at Mar-a-Lago, that's no good. You know,
Sealed in the shitter.
When you have it sealed on a stage that everybody can get to, and the shitter, and none of them are sealed, and some of them are tipped over, and there's classified documents lying on the floor, and you lie to the FBI about having those multiple times, and you obstruct justice multiple times, and you instruct your staff to hide things multiple times, and when you take boxes and you take them to Bedminster, New Jersey multiple times, then suddenly you get prosecuted. Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
Yeah, again, just remember that the docs case, nobody has ever been prosecuted for having classified documents outside of a SCIF, right? It's the not giving them back, and it's the obstruction. And that's what the indictment's about. It's about obstructing an investigation and not giving them back. It has nothing to do with taking them. No one's being prosecuted, even though you could make the argument he should be. Trump is not being prosecuted for taking them. He's being prosecuted for not giving them back.
They are. They think they're tough. But a lot of them come to me and they'll say, how do you do it? You go through all these subpoenas. You got indicted. Now, in my whole life, I didn't know what I didn't know what indictment meant.
I believe that.
You got indicted.
I believe that.
More than Alphonse Capone, Scarface. They say, how do you take it? How do you do it? I say,
he hasn't even been indicted that many times.
How do you take
let's
it?
Just go with that. The way he always wants to be compared to like the worst people in history is very interesting. You know what I mean? Like the projection, there's shameless honesty in the projection.
Well, also Al Capone ran a criminal organization, and he was charged with running a criminal organization, RICO. Like it was all encompassing. Donald Trump keeps committing crimes that aren't related to each other. That's why there's so many indictments.
Well, there's not that many indictments, though. I think I actually looked it up, and Al Capone was definitely indicted more times than Trump.
I was pulling it up right now.
How many indictments are there? 4? Like, he hasn't been indicted many times.
Well, he's counting each individual crime, right? So he's saying...
Well, those are counts, though, because indictment... So I'm just saying,
yeah.
like, when he's talking about indictment, he hasn't been indicted that many times.
We have a new category of crime in our country. It's called migrant crime, and it's taking over.
Okay, so this is vile, and we were talking about this a little on Friday, I believe, or it was either Thursday or Friday, with Beth Van Dyne. This new talking point, which is ironic because any crime that happens now, right? Any crime at all that happens with people that are in this country, that crossed into this country, whether... that crossed into this country. He calls it migrant crime, or I can't remember. I think he's trying to call it migrant crime, like Biden migrant crime or something. Like they are trying to have this narrative that's like all the crime, which we looked up. That's not true for Texas, where they're trying to sell this narrative. So just remember that. But we're about to hear some very vile things, right? Like this is bigotry at its best.
Category of crime in our country. It's called migrant crime, and it's taking over America. You know, in New York, what's happening with crime it's through the roof. And it's called migrant. I call it a new category.
And that's not true. Like I made a TikTok about this last week. Specifically, it relates to New York. No, like most of the crime is just residents of New York City committing crimes.
Right.
Like Hannity specifically is trying to sell a narrative where people, because they take isolated incidences, where there was a crime committed by a migrant and try to then extrapolate off that and say this is like a crime wave. It is not.
Right. Crime across the country largely is down from COVID.
Yeah.
Like we saw a spike in COVID, which makes sense when you see spikes in crime when people are desperate. But like largely across the country, it is, if you're looking at in totality, there we go. The number is down. I wanted to point real quick. Capone was indicted 6 times.
So more than Trump.
Yep.
Came up with that name, but I think it's appropriate. It's a new category of crime where they go and they beat up police officers. You say that. They go and...
That is, again, something that Hannity highlighted, right? That's a one-off incident, not a crime wave.
And they stab people, hurt people, shoot people. It's a whole new form, and they have gangs now that are making our games look like small potatoes, okay?
Oh, now they're taking our gangs jobs?
This to happen. We will call it from now on Biden migrant crime, okay? It's migrant crime. We'll call it, I got it, migrant. Let's call it migrant. Biden crime. Oh, that's good. That's smart. Migrant crime.
So smart.
No, but
So what's important to know, MAGA, I'm glad you guys are here and listening to this, is that none of what he said is true, unfortunately. Crime since the pandemic has been consistently dropping across the country. Okay, so it's very important to know that. And that is another reason why you should be worried about Donald Trump as your candidate, right? It was one thing when there was crime waves and the economy was in the toilet and all these things. But since the economy has rebounded, crime has gone down. Like, this is why he wouldn't fix the border.
Yeah.
That is his last thing he's clinging to. Now, this migrant crime,
Yeah,
right?
where their gangs are taking our
any
gangs'
crime
jobs.
that happens, just know that's because Donald Trump wouldn't fix the border. The border is underfunded.
And now,
at every turn, we needed to change federal immigration law in order to make the changes that keep being struck down in federal court. None of that will now happen because of Donald Trump.
Duckbeard's migrant crime there with the LGBTQ flag is brilliant. I do like that Donald Trump is now trying to solicit gang members by saying they're also losing their jobs to migrants. And while you bring up Hannah,
the gang members are victims of the replacement theory as well. Apparently, that's extending out.
Yeah, and then I'm sure you saw this, but Hannity last week had members of that awful group called something angels, guardian angels.
Yeah, that's the clip he's talking about. Notice how Trump will constantly take a one-off. They have one clip, right?
Okay, do you know what happened with that clip?
Where they're beating, and it's like it's not what they said it was. They're like beating up someone.
Yeah, so it turns out.
Is that what you're talking about?
So they, in the middle of Hannity's show, they tackled this migrant who was shoplifting, and they beat up on him. Turns out, not a migrant, New York citizen, United States citizen, also wasn't shoplifting. They saw a brown person and attacked them. And Hannity I don't remember exactly their words, but basically like, hey, don't cut away, turn to it, record this, keep us live. Hannity demanded that they keep that live, and they just beat up an innocent person, detained and beat up an innocent person because they were brown. They said they're a migrant and they stole something. And that's what they said on air. Hannity had to come out and actually, for once, issue an apology.
Did he end up doing a retraction? Because I didn't.
He had to do it the next
so he
day.
did end up doing a retraction. Oh, okay. Well, because I missed that.
Trump seems to have missed it too. Yeah.
Well, and that's when I say, like, he's talking about some one-off incorrect incident, and they would just love there to be a crime wave. But again, just know whatever happens now with the border, that's a result of Donald Trump refusing to allow House Republicans to do their job and to do anything about the border. This is such a long
We're going to have the largest deportation effort in the history of our country.
Yeah, here we go.
We have no choice. We have no choice. It's a terrible thing. And we're going to start with the really bad ones first. And you know, the local police, they know who the bad ones are. They knew, and we're going to take care of our local police. Your sheriff has recently stated that organized criminal squads of illegal alien gang members are hiding in the trees and breaking into rural and suburban Michigan, into your homes after dark, plundering them for jewelry, purses,
This again is a lie or a one-off incident, right? Like, he's saying someone told him this.
electronics, cash, watches, and anything else they can get their hands on. That's what's happening in Michigan. It happened to that guy.
And he's physically pointing out someone in the audience and saying it happened to that man specifically. These are not real things.
This happened in your house, sir. It's happening now while you're here. This is happening.
He's giving this speech in Michigan, right? This is Michigan, if you don't know, like, Dearborn has the largest Muslim population, many minority groups, different minority groups represented in Detroit, and is placing all of them in danger, right? By spreading lies.
Raising his hand, it happened to him. If you don't want to have illegal alien criminals crawling through your windows and going through your drawers, as the expression goes. Then vote against crooked Joe Biden. Throw him the hell out of office. Before I even arrive. Meaning impeach him. Like, this whole part, he has not fixed the border. He's trying to run on the border.
insulting everyone's intelligence by acting like there wasn't a border solution that he himself killed, is now gaslighting and warning people about a migrant crime wave that is not real in order to put minority groups in this country in danger.
The irony of this, like of Trump and the comparisons of him to fascist dictators, is his use of propaganda. Like, it's exclusive now. Donald Trump only uses propaganda now. Like, this is a story that isn't happening, doesn't happen. That he's just now turning into a scary narrative. Again, if you need to scare people into voting for you, you probably don't have anything worth voting for. But Republicans don't care. They love being scared. It's like their favorite thing. They love to talk tough and then be scared of people who look or think differently than them. It's like, it's terrifying to them. He could just as easily just say that people are breaking in to turn your kids gay. He could do any of these. It would be just as effective on Republicans. As long as you scare them.
Well, that's a different narrative. That is one of their narratives that they're definitely selling.
Yeah,
like that's one of them, for sure.
We're all here to destroy America. That's what we're here for.
We have this regime. It's like a regime, and believe me, they are bad for democracy. What they're doing with elections, what they're doing in Washington, D.C., with people, putting them in jail for years and years and years, and they let Antifa get away with murder. It's just a horrible thing. It's a very bad
Who got away with?
It's a very dangerous
Who got away with that in Antifa?
No one. That, again, more lies. Oh, wait. Was Kyle Rittenhouse? He definitely got away with some murder.
Were there people that were not, charges weren't brought? Nothing was investigated? Is that, we know people from Antifa who committed murder and then we just didn't do anything? Okay. By the way, Antifa... Yeah,
that's definitely not happened.
Basically has been quiet since Joe Biden's been in office. Those charges that you needed to bring against Antifa, those would have happened during the Trump years. Those riots that we had in the summer, the demonstrations we had in the summer, the few buildings that did burn down, Donald Trump was president for that. So now just revisionist history as well, saying that this is somehow Joe Biden's fault.
But also, it's largely been debunked that was Antifa. I invite anyone to do their research about the BLM protests and realize who actually was destroying buildings. Like, that's been debunked as well.
Everybody should be Antifa. And if you are not Antifa, you're a fascist. Like that, you get that, right? Like, you can't be, if you're not anti-fascist, then what are you?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I told you how I ran into some people in MAGA who thought Antifa stood for Anti-First Amendment. That's what I knew. We were all never, like, they were beyond help.
Yeah.
These people.
That's just what they're promoting.
How is Fani doing in...
Oh, yeah, now he's going after Fani.
How is Fani doing in... How's she doing in Fulton County, Atlanta? How's that trial? No, I paid him cash.
She's doing really fucking well. That's how.
I didn't take anything. I paid him cash. Oh, where'd you get the cash? They're not allowed to answer that question. They're not allowed to answer. I paid him cash, she said. I gave him cash. Oh, I didn't take anything. No. Every time we went on a trip, took 9 trips in 1 year. That's a lot of trips.
Wait,
I
what?
haven't taken a
Wait,
trip.
what?
I don't think I've taken
9?
a trip for about 30 years.
He said he hasn't taken a trip.
Wait,
this
hold
man
on.
took more vacation days when he was president than any other
She didn't
president.
take 9 trips. What's he talking about?
He's just making up numbers.
Yeah, that didn't.
He's just saying.
That didn't happen.
He's just saying numbers. Like
there were
always.
2
Like, none of
cruises
this
in
is true.
California, right? Those were the trips.
But I just want to review the important. No, there's more. There were more trips. It's more than 2.
No, it was 2 cruises and then the California. Everything else, I think, was like.
No, it was 2 cruises. They went to Belize. They went to Aruba. There were day trips inside where they drove to Tennessee to cabins. There were
That's
more.
what I'm
There were
asking.
many more.
Okay, yeah.
There were many more
trips.
than.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were many more trips. But the point is that what he's saying is not true. And what we need to remember about Fani Willis, again, is that Fani Willis is not on trial. And it is absolutely 100% acceptable to pay somebody back in cash.
I agree. I was just looking to 2021. Okay. Keep going.
I don't take too many trips, but it's like, I think she said 9 trips Every time I took a trip with my lover, I paid him in cash. Where the hell did you get the cash? You know, what a lot of bullshit.
Can you pause that? Let's just answer these. She answered that question. They said, do you have ATM receipts? She said no. And she specifically named a couple of places where she obtained a lot of cash. And again, she kept cash in a safe. Her divorce, she got a lot of cash out of, she said. She kept a lot of cash from the divorce. And her first, whatever she ran for first, I can't remember, she ran for Senate or something? She had put some of her own money into that campaign. And at the end of the campaign was over, she withdrew it and she kept it in cash. She did answer these questions. Donald Trump pretending like she didn't have an answer for these questions is bullshit. All she really said is, yeah, I've got cash, and here's a couple instances of places it came from. Sometimes I'm at the grocery store and I get cash back, I put it in there, or if I pay with a 50 and they give me cash back, I put it in there. Like, it can come from a lot of places. So I can't tell you where the exact bills that I paid him came from, but here are many instances where I withdraw cash and put it in my safe. Oh, and by the way, my dad is going to testify that he taught me to do this, and he himself does this, and then he did testify to that. Like, she had all of her bases covered here. This is a nonsense, non-starter story, and don't let Republicans today, when they're on panels, get away with this shit. She absolutely knows where the cash came from, just not the particular bills. She knows where most of that cash has come from.
Guys, tap the screen. Let's get to 275K. And yeah, absolutely, she knows where the cash has came from. Again, and the most important thing, she's not on trial. 18 defendants are on trial for trying to steal an election and for not allowing the people of Georgia's votes to be counted. That is who is on trial. Donald Trump is on trial. Donald Trump needs to prove his innocence. Fani Willis, in no way, needs to prove anything to anyone.
Quick thing. We're also talking about roughly $3,000 in cash, I think, is when we totaled it up. Something along those lines. Secondly, Lisa sent a message for diving into rabbit holes and sleepless nights. Thank you, Lisa. Again, we're participating in CoinCon. So for anybody who would like to gift, there's the Venmo and the Cash App, and we will read any message that you attach to it. We greatly appreciate your support. It's been a massive help.
And guys, tap the screen. Guys, let's keep tapping the screen. Let's try to get to 300K. I know this speech, there's a lot to play here, but I do feel like it's important just to go through this speech because this is like the longest speech I've ever seen Donald Trump give.
I just want to add
lots of complaining to do.
I just want to add one more thing. I last week went out and I got a little safety deposit, or not safety deposit box, a lock box. And I put a few $100s in that. And that money is going to go, like, that will be given to my daughter. I was unaware of the stuff Fani Willis was talking about. I had never even thought about women being able to have cash on hand in case they get stranded, lose their cell phone, lose their credit cards, whatever it might be. Or they may be in a place where they need help and they need to have cash. Never thought about it. So I appreciate this trial for one reason, is that it taught me to make sure that my daughter is prepared for these types of instances.
And okay, well, it's also, as long as we're going along there, like what you need to understand specifically if you're a white male, right? Not from any sort of minority group, you're not a woman, you're not familiar with it. Like traditionally, throughout history, let's just stick with American history, but this happened all over the world. Anytime a persecuted minority group would try to amass wealth, it would be taken from them or destroyed, right? We can see that with like Black Wall Street in Tulsa. Like the minute any group of minorities would amass wealth, it would be taken. This happened to a lot of Jews during anti-Semitism around World War II. That's why a lot of people that were involved in World War II, Jewish people, didn't trust banks because their assets were being seized. And so what you need to understand, this is why minority groups who for hundreds of years have been persecuted and their votes have not counted, this is why they're wary of banks. This is why they keep cash, because throughout history, any wealth they amass without notice could be taken from them. That's why when you hear her father on the stand, and you hear other African Americans hearing this testimony being like, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about, because yeah, you should not, if you're wondering why African Americans do not trust banks, You need to think about it. It's not that far of a reach. The same happened in the Jewish community around World War II. They could not put their money in financial institutions because it would be seized or sanctioned or whatever, and they would never get it back.
Yeah, all of this was definitely news to me. So, like, if it's news to me, who I try my best to know those things, like, I'm sure it's news to a lot of people. And to these Trump folks that are listening, to them that sounds unusual. But again, they haven't experienced that. They don't have, their parents didn't experience that. They have no idea what that's about. So to them, it does seem fishy, which is why this works for Donald Trump when he doesn't tell the truth of the whole story of where the money came from, why she paid the money. How about Donald Trump? Let's tell the actual story. What Fani Willis said specifically to Nathan Wade, and she was pretty honest about this. She's like, look, Nathan Wade has some misogyny problems. He says some misogynistic stuff. And I wanted it to be very clear from the start that I didn't need him. Like, I wanted him as a companion, but I did not need him. I didn't need him to pay my bills. I didn't want him to be able to hold anything over me. So I paid my way the entire time. That is back.
A man is not a
That's
plan,
right.
is what Fani said on the stand. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion.
And all of that was backed up by testimony, not only from her, but from her dad, from Nathan Wade, from his Nathan Wade's divorce attorney. Like, everybody that knew her intimately knew that like, agreed that that's
Nathan
the
Wade
story.
agreed.
Yeah, Nathan Wade did agree.
And she said, like, she's like, I'm not trying to insult him, but Nathan Wade at one point told her, the only thing a woman can really do for me is make me a sandwich. And she said that they had a lot of very huge fights about that she was his equal. And she felt like he could not get that through his head. And like Jay saying, he affirmed that on the stand.
That's got to be, for Fani Willis, when you see like how frustrated she is and how animated, that's the thing. Like, that's got to be the frustrating part. She did everything right. And the things that she did right are actually what's now causing this trial, which is a bizarre thing. It must be bizarre for her to be sitting in trial, hearing people like smear her for literally doing the right thing over and over and over, and making sure that, like,
almost to 300K.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Making sure that people...
No, sorry, I'm just keep tapping.
That people knew that, like, she wasn't going to be bought. She wasn't going to be bribed. She tried not to hire Nathan Wade. Like, she did everything right. And that's what was beautiful about this trial. And even more beautiful about Donald Trump here now pretending that it's not going well for her. I can't imagine that that anything happens to Fani Willis. The only way it didn't go well from her is that she had to sit through it, and she should never have had to sit through this.
And I especially not like publicly on TV, but I want to say, like, also whatever ends up coming of this, I think Judge McAfee, from what I've seen, has proven himself to be a reasonable, non-biased judge. I think he's doing as good a job as can be done, and I think whatever does come of it, like, I will never think it was because he was biased, you know? Like, I think he's been nothing but fair. Okay, moving along to the next annoying Trump clip.
I'm also going to indemnify all police officers and law enforcement.
Again, so that means when he says indemnify, he means none of us will be able to sue the police anymore when they commit crimes against us, right? Like, we cannot make claims against police when they unalive people unjustly. He's going to make it so nobody can hold them accountable. So yes, great job, guys. 305K.
So how are they going to charge the corrupt FBI and Department of Justice if they're indemnified?
Well, that's part of the thing. He says he's going to indemnify the police. I think this is one of the last ways of, like, Trump pretending he backs the blue, because he very much does not back the blue when it comes to him being held accountable for his own crimes. Those people should be sued, right? He countersues the police all the time. You know what I mean? This is the most litigious man in history. Like, yeah. So is Trump completely contradicting himself? Yes.
Enforcement officials throughout the United States to protect them from being destroyed by the radical left people in office that want them to be hurt, that don't want them to look for crime and stop crime. They can stop crime so fast, but they're told not to.
What?
They're told to stand away as people walk out with television sets out of department stores that end up going out of business. And we're going to protect those officers.
Let's stop
and
it there,
those precincts.
too.
And
Let's stop it there. Let's call this bullshit for what it is. what happened is they changed what people could be prosecuted for. They did not say that a police officer cannot arrest somebody for walking out of a store with stolen property. Like, that's not what happened. He's now drawing this illustration that police can show up to, let's just say, a Walmart and watch people walk out with TVs and do nothing about it. That's not what happened. Company policy says that the security can't really stop somebody and they don't want to have violence. And the prosecution for a felony is at a certain dollar amount. That's nothing new. Like, dollar amounts have always determined how serious your crime is, like financial crimes. The more the more the dollar amount gets, the more serious the crime. And some are misdemeanors and some are felony. And sometimes the only distinguishing line is how much you either defrauded or how much you stole. Like, this is not new, but it's also it's not happening the way that he's explaining it. We don't have police that are standing down doing nothing. You know how many times police solve shoplifting crimes? Almost fucking never, right? Unless you have video and you have a license plate and you could track that person down, they don't solve it. But this doesn't say that the police can't go track down shoplifters. It only says you can't charge them with a felony and hold them if it's not over a certain dollar amount. You can still be arrested. You can still be charged with a misdemeanor. You can still demand that the store be reimbursed. All of that still exists. This is not a real story. This is just make-believe land.
Well, this is, if we want to get technical, this is Trump needs to update his Trump rally speech.
Yeah,
this is the same. He hasn't changed the what's on the teleprompter now. It's been too long. Like, crime has gone down. Like, that's why I say, like, you could always tell, like, MAGA who are being indoctrinated from True Social, because, like, time has marched on. Crime statistics have changed since the pandemic, but Trump is giving the same speech. And that's really what the issue is he's not updating his speech.
It's a real problem Republicans have, because what you did is you laid the blame on virtually everything on Joe Biden. And so if those things get like inflation, unemployment, as those numbers get better, you've already blamed him for them existing. So now what do? Do you say, even though they got better, it was still his fault? No, that's not a very good campaign message. So what do? You pretend nothing got fixed. And largely for MAGA, it's been working. Like, look at the MAGAs in this comment who still think our economy is in shambles. Right? Like, there are real problems with our economy, and that problem mostly has to do with wealth disparity. But if we're talking about the economic indicators that Trump brags about, by all measures, Joe Biden has gotten better. So he can't say that. He just has to keep continuing on this, like, post-COVID, directly post-COVID, as the world was coming back and inflation was high and unemployment was high and people got back to their normal lives. Like, you just pretend we're still there.
Exactly. It doesn't make that's not mapping.
Because you can stop that whole phenomenon where they walk into 300 guys run into a department store and they loot it, and it's like literally there's not a thing on the shelves. They take millions and millions of dollars out, and inevitably they close the stores. They're closing stores all over the country.
Can pause that there?
You can stop that.
This has been heavily reported, but that's a lie. It's an absolute lie that these corporations were shutting down profitable businesses that were the product of looting. It's been told, CVS specifically and Walgreens, they understaffed their stores. They understaffed security because the managers make more money if there's less staff. But these were not profitable stores anyways. These were stores that most people, like, why do you go to CVS? I go to CVS if it's like the closest thing. The prices aren't that great, like, or prescriptions. No. Like, I get better prescription prices at my grocery store.
It's for convenience. Yeah, it's geographically desirable. They try to have one on every corner.
Yeah, Amazon.
The phenomenon of brick and mortar businesses moving online, of no longer wanting to have the overhead cost of a storefront, that is something with the onset of technology.
Yes, CVS,
and companies like Amazon.
CVS is replaced by Amazon. Almost everything I buy at CVS, I can get with Amazon within a couple hours. I can DoorDash it. I can GoPuff it if I want to spend a little extra and pay the delivery fee. But sometimes I can get a cheaper price on Amazon, and I can have it delivered within the next couple of hours. Like, that's what's really happening.
That's why CVS, think about it. When you have a brick and mortar store, the prices are high because you have to pay for electricity in that store. You have to pay for the staff in that store. There's overhead costs that you're tacking on to each price, right? That's why the cheapest way to buy goods is online and just have them delivered, because you're cutting out the necessary, like, of having the storefront. Those are huge overhead costs that are now businesses are realizing can be cut out. That's what's happening. Trump would love it to be because he saw someone carry a refrigerator out of a store or whatever he's always saying. It's just not the case.
This comes from a lobbying group called the National Retail Federation. And the National Retail Federation was the first ones to talk about like this organized like mass crime in these cities. Initially, in 2001, they said theft results in $45 billion in annual losses for retailers, roughly half of the industry's $94.5 billion in missing merchandise in 2021. But the lobbying group has since retracted that figure, saying the report from the group relied on an inaccurate figure from Ben Dugan, president of the National Coalition of Law Enforcement in Retail. And when I tell you that it was an inaccurate figure, let me tell you what happened. He stood in front of a crowd and he made up a fucking number and everybody cited that number. That's the whole story. That's the whole story. He didn't, when asked where he got that data, didn't have it. He made it up. And then the entire lobbying group and all the Republicans jumped on that and they reported that number. And that number was reported for like a year. And the only reason we know that number's fake is because they have to submit financials at the end of the year. And when they submitted the financials at the end of the year, it was like 80% lower than that number. It was just one big massive lie that started with one law enforcement guy on a stage, a lobbyist, who wants more funding for the police and who wants police to be indemnified and wants more protections, to pretend that the police needed more power because something that wasn't happening was happening. That's...
Imagine having no factual information. Like, MAGA literally is lied to 24 hours a day. They know nothing of what is going on in the real world, and they just eat it up. They just love it. Nothing they have ever been told is true. And they're just like, makes perfect sense.
Wait,
Anyways,
real quick,
okay,
Chris sent a donation and said, this donation is worth 50 to 100 times what I sent.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Chris.
That's beautiful, Chris.
That's a good one. 50 to 100 times the number that I agreed it was originally worth.
I'll see if the bank agrees with that. I'll let you know.
Okay, so I think that's enough of Trump's speech. If you want to see one of Trump's longest, most in-depth, most least factual speeches of all time, I would say like Trump now doesn't even bother to include one fact. He did not bother in this speech to talk about any policy, what he's going to do for people. It is just him complaining and projecting blame onto other people. It's unreal. And then after that, like, here's another really good clip from Michael Cohen, that this goes to Lara Trump and the RNC stuff. More about Lara Trump and the RNC stuff.
Is that going to go to the campaign? What's your opinion? What's your prediction here? Do you think that one of the reasons that Donald Trump's been talking about having Lara Trump at the RNC, in his own mind, he sees these judgments and he's thinking, I probably need some other source. Maybe it could be the RNC and additional marks?
Well, that, as well as he's going to need a lot of money in terms of advertising and campaigning in order to try to defeat Joe Biden, which he is not successful in raising, believe it or not. What I think Lara stupidly said, and again, as you know, I've called her, stupid in the past, and she is that all of the money that's raised by the RNC is supposed to go to the one and only important race, and that's the race in order to elect Donald Trump to the presidency. That's not what the RNC is about. That's not what people are giving money for. A lot of that money is supposed to go to down ballot races. You have members of Congress that are going to be running very tough races on the Republican side, and the RNC helps them historically in order to ensure that they have a legitimate shot of running against, whether it's an incumbent who already has a well-funded campaign or somebody who's new that has the ability to raise capital on the Democratic side. Many of these races are also primary races where, they're running against other Republicans who may be also well financed. So her statement about, and that's very rare, by the way, just so you know that they do it in primaries. It's really for Republican versus Democratic ballot. But that's the purpose of the RNC, their capital raise. It's in order to help other politicians win, other Republican politicians win seats that they're going for. Not all of it is supposed to go to just one guy. That's exactly what Donald has in mind for Lara, that all money raised is supposed to go to him, his campaign, and whatever else that they need it for.
So this was from Erica Orden. This is what I was talking about earlier from Politico. I went back and found it. So when they talk about like what they could do with the money, this is from, I'm trying to remember which law professor this was from Harvard, but he said that the courts don't have restrictions on the sources of funds used to pay judgments, and Trump would surely like to tap other funds from whatever money is in his own personal accounts. He could transfer assets from the Trump organization to himself in order to help satisfy these judgments. Using his political vehicles to pay would be far trickier. There's a general ban on using campaign donations for personal uses unrelated to a campaign or the official duties of an office holder. And as for his political action committees, they can't pay Trump judgments. Campaign funds can't be used for that purpose, regardless of whether the PAC is the decision maker. One thing to remember: Trump's PAC has spent $29 million in legal consulting and legal fees in the second half of last year, leaving only $5 million. So, of all the money that he raised to him to run for president, 29 of the 34 million is gone. The Republican National Committee doesn't have the same ban on personal use of funds as Trump's campaign committee, but if they did try and pay off Trump's bills, they would lose their nonprofit status. So that's what he's dealing with. I'm not 100% convinced that the Republicans wouldn't agree to lose their nonprofit status to pay off his bills. Like I just at this point, I think they'll do anything. I don't think we should rule that out, that they just blow up the party to pay his bills.
I don't know. That's a hard one. I think like the interesting thing is that PACs can pay legal fees, but not judgments, which I mean, I think that's fair, and think that, like, that's great for Trump supporters that it's not going to. But I guess we'll just have to see, because I would say that largely any individual you ask, like, would say, like, Republicans are horrified at the idea of Trump taking over the RNC, but like, you're in bed with him at this point, and if it's that important to you to have a Republican president, like, I think what's really damaging is, and great for Democrats, is that, like what we said, if he does wrest control of the RNC from, and is able to use this money in whatever way and gets the bulk of it, then all of the down ballot races, what the Republicans have been so proficient at is, having a stranglehold on state legislatures, getting, all of these things will no longer be possible, because that money, as Lara Trump said, every appearance she made last week, is largely going to be funneled to Trump. So you will lose the Republican money that was funneled to win these state elections. Like, a great example is the Senate election in Georgia, the runoff election that they had. They used RNC money to help Herschel Walker try to win that election. They spent and spent and spent. Like, those are the things that come up when they have these close Senate races or whatever it is that the RNC would normally funnel money to. But Lara's very clearly saying, no, it's all going to Daddy Trump. So, I mean, it's great for the Democratic Party, not so great for any reasonable person who's still a Republican.
But look, I side with MAGA Republicans here. Do it. Spend all your money on Donald Trump.
To Dottie. He's already grifted you guys out of everything else. Why not just keep going?
I think that's how.
Give him all your money.
I think that's kind of how they feel right now. It's just like, well, I hope he's right. We've come this far. We can't get out of it now. So let's hope he's got a plan here. And good, keep doing it. We're on board. I do have a video for you when you're done, but it just a video to make you happy. So when you're done with this, before we go, I do want to play a video or just some audio for you.
Okay, well, I wanted to play this. This is Jared Moskowitz talking about what we've been talking about. This is the Alexander Smirnov, like the 1023 form that James Comer, Jim Jordan, they built their whole impeachment inquiry on that now turns out to be a lie. This is Jared Moskowitz talking about that.
The other one, this one, a spy of Russia, which we still kind of knew before that, which was maybe a big hint that this so-called whistleblower wasn't credible. But now this individual, Alexander Smirnov, has been arrested, being prosecuted by the special counsel, David Weiss, for lying on this 1023. What do you make of this, all Congress member?
Yeah, shocking that the guy with the last name is the same as a vodka from Russia didn't turn out to be the most credible person of all time. Nothing. It's just, look. This is the 118th Congress, baby. I mean, just strap in, because this thing's just a roller coaster, right? Remove a speaker, that never happened in American history. Remove a cabinet secretary, that hasn't happened in 150 years. It's happened never when you had no treason or high crime or misdemeanor. So put the Constitution aside for a second. We removed a member of the House, that hadn't happened in 20 years. And, you know, once in a while we can fit in a censure resolution when we have time. And now we have our dear friend, James Comer, who we wish the best for. Thoughts and prayers to James Comer as we watch the death of his faux, fake, frivolous Biden impeachment come to a bitter end. Because this 1023 form was the birth. This was the birthplace of the idea that Joe Biden should be impeached, right? He got $5 million, secret FBI informant. Members had to go see the form in a skiff, secure location, right? It was a protected document. He was credible. And yet we find out he made the whole thing up. He made the entire thing up. He's now been indicted.
They indicted me.
James is 2-0, baby. 2-0. This is the second informant that James has had indicted. Like you mentioned, the first one was a Chinese foreign agent who was selling oil to the Iranians and arms to the Libyans.
Indicted.
And so, look, you know, James is crushing it. And I don't know if you heard, that special counsel will be coming to Congress in a couple of weeks. But guess where they're not sending him? Oh, they ain't sending him to oversight. Nope, took that away from James and is giving that to judiciary instead.
That's too bad, guys.
We're almost at 350K. Tap the screen, guys.
David's in the request, but we don't have time. So sorry, David. You know what time we go live every day. You'll have to show up a different time. But here's the clip I wanted to play. Just I was hoping you haven't seen it. I'm guessing you have. But I loved it, and I immediately thought of you when I saw it. So we're just gonna play this as our last meal for today.
Come back earlier tomorrow, David. I miss you.
Your plate right now, from stripping away women's rights to hearing January 6th cases you definitely shouldn't be hearing, to potentially helping roll back decades of federal regulations. And you deserve a break. You know, away from...
Real quick, this is a video
last week.
Yeah, and they're talking about Clarence Thomas. This is about Clarence Thomas, so what he should be doing. Let me start that over and see. Wow, we have...
lot on your plate right now, from stripping away women's rights to hearing January 6th cases you definitely shouldn't be hearing, to potentially helping roll back decades of federal regulations. And you deserve a break, you know, away from the meanness of Washington, so you can be surrounded by the regular folks whose lives you've made demonstrably worse for decades now. And the good news is, I think we can help you there, because since your favorite mode of travel might be in need of an upgrade, we are excited to offer you this brand new, top-of-the-line Prevost Marathon motor coach. Look at this
giant motorhome.
It's worth $2.4 million, and it's got a full bedroom. Yes, that is a king bed. 1.5 baths, a fucking fireplace, 4 TVs, a washer dryer, and I quote, a residential-sized fridge. And if you're thinking, what will my friends say if I take this offer? Will they judge me as they sit in their boardrooms and mega yachts and Hitler shrines? Will they still treat me to luxury vacations and sing songs about me off their phones? Well, that's the beauty of friendship, Clarence. If they're real friends, they'll love you no matter what your job is. So I guess this might be the perfect way to find out who your real friends actually are. So that's the offer. $1 million a year, Clarence, and a brand new condo on wheels. And all you have to do in return is sign the contract and get the fuck off the Supreme Court. Talk it over with your totally best friend in the whole world. Because the clock starts now. 30 days, Clarence. Let's do this. That's our shot.
30 days. Clarence Thomas.
Is that how much the real motorhome cost that he was showing? 2.4.
Yeah, the motorhome is there. A $2.4 million motorhome and $1 million a year to step down from the Supreme Court. That's a good. He's got 30 days to accept. I love that. I thought that would make you happy.
God, something has to be done about the Supreme Court, for the love of God.
Well,
for sure.
If it doesn't, we'll be here to talk about it.
Last night, I mean, before we go, just to leave it at this, last night, Nikki Haley did a town hall, and like one of the first things she said was that she would pardon Trump. So if anyone has any, like, for how angry she's been at Donald Trump, just note that all Republicans eventually are exactly who we think they are.
Yeah, it just reminds me that at some point in the near future, we're going to see Nikki Haley endorsing Trump, and all this hope that we had for the GOP to actually have principles will be gone. It's disappointing. But we'll be back tomorrow and we'll talk about it again. Felice, excellent outline today. Teacher Felice was in full force today. She deserves a round of applause that she won't be able to hear, but we all owe Felice a round of applause for what she put together today. Teacher Felice was A+ today. We'll be back tomorrow morning and every morning, 8:30 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time, right here on TikTok. You can find our replays on YouTube. They're posted within a few hours after, they're posted in the evening, but you can find our replays as well as some additional content on YouTube. Make sure you're following us there. Subscribe. It's free to subscribe. The Discord is still open. If you'd like an invite to Discord, shoot myself or Jen or one of the moderators a message. We'll make sure we get you an invite there. To all the moderators who are here and those who didn't make it today, thank you. Appreciate you guys controlling the chat and the Discord and all that you do. We love you.
Thanks, guys. Until tomorrow.